Tonight's episode of the Bill Simmons Podcast on the Ringer Podcast Network, brought to you by ZipRecruiter. You know it's not smart. Talking shit all summer if you're a 7'2" center on the Sixers. And then the best team in the East comes after you the whole game. You know what else is the smart? Job sites that overwhelm you with tons of the wrong resumes. Luckily, there's a smart way at ZipRecruiter.com/BS. They find people with the right skills for your job, actively invite them to apply. You get qualified candidates fast. Right now, my listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/BS. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Meanwhile, SeatGeek is the best app for buying and selling tickets to sporting events, concerts, and more. Concerts. $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase on any game, sporting event, whatever you want. Use promo code BS. Download the SeatGeek app or go right to SeatGeek.com. Taping the first part of this on a Tuesday night. We just did the Ringer's NBA Preview Palooza. We did 12 hours of content. All of it is now available on our YouTube channel, on our Twitter channel, /feed, which is @RingerNBA or @Ringer. You can check us out on Twitch. You can check us out some of the Instagram stuff. We did some great stuff. Culminating a live watch tonight, Celts-76ers. Van Lathan, who is not, you haven't been on this podcast yet, right?
I have not.
You have not been.
It's my first time, man.
Sweet. So he was in the live watch. We pulled him in. Joe House is here. Joe House has done an incredible amount of content today.
I'm honored to be
And
here.
You haven't really been fed, have you?
No, I'm hungry. I'm
figured you'd be
legitimately
hungry.
We're
Yeah,
at
we've
the
been
point of
doing-
the evening.
We did multiple things on the Ringer channel live. But we also taped something for your podcast. And
House
you
of
taped something
Cards.
else for your podcast.
That's true.
And now we're here after
Bang.
a 2.5 hour live watch.
Yeah, he was talking about Popeye's chicken.
What was it?
You know how you know somebody's hungry when they see a commercial on TV and they go, "Damn, I gotta eat."
Yeah.
Well, because it was Popeyes also. I mean, that's
You like
a whole,
Popeyes?
Oh, I'm an enormous
it does
Popeyes
sounds
fan.
like
It's
Popeyes.
documented
Yeah,
Popeyes fan.
Loves the Popeyes. So coming up, we're going to talk about what we saw tonight and some other stuff. And then a little bit later, the Oscar winner, Damien Chazelle, came on with me and Sean Fennessey. An interview we taped yesterday. It was really interesting and really good. So that's all coming up, but first, Pearl Jam. All right, it is Tuesday night. We're between games here. We're taping this at 7:42 at night Pacific time. The Celtics beat the Sixers. The Warriors are getting their rings as we speak. Van Lathan is here. Joe House is here.
Mm-hmm.
He's hungry.
Yeah.
So all the Ringer people, we do that live watch, and they're all trying to start Celtics shit after.
Right.
There's no way, the chemistry and all that stuff. I will say they benched Kyrie. I mean, Kyrie was terrible tonight. Hopefully it was an aberration. They benched him the last 4 minutes. Jaylen Brown sits out in crunch time in favor of Gordon Hayward.
Right.
Rozier and Smart were fantastic. And yet, they're out of the game in the fourth quarter. It was the first time I was like, oh man, we actually have enough talent here that this actually could become a problem. What was your takeaway as a Laker fan who hates the Celtics?
Well, first of all, I don't necessarily hate the Celtics. I
hate the Lakers.
I despise the Celtics with a seething white house. For me, I'm the only sort of positive I could take away from the game is that it's all going to blow up in you guys' faces. I know that the ship is sinking. We're polishing the brass on a Titanic. It's all going down. But seriously, all jokes aside, if I'm Kyrie Irving and I came to Boston to be the guy that closes out games because I didn't want to share the ball with the biggest basketball star, maybe in 3 or 4, whatever, that's got to sting a little bit that they don't need you to close games for them, that they have a guy who does it a little bit better than you. I think
Tatum was getting any shot he wanted.
Tatum was
basically
getting
that whole
any
game.
shot he wanted to. He was scoring in the half court. He was scoring in ISOs. He was scoring in transition. He was doing whatever he wanted to do. And he was showing some dimensions that, maybe Kyrie doesn't have.
No, come on.
I'm not when I say doesn't have, I mean like Kyrie Irving is a fantastic one-on-one ISO scorer. I'm looking at this situation and I'm going, maybe perhaps there's got to be a changing of the guard in Boston at some point.
Maybe
season.
he shouldn't be the guy all the time. Oh, House loves this because
I
he's a
really
Washington
love
fan.
it. The stark difference between what I would say Tatum, Smart, Rozier, Brown.
Yeah.
What those guys look like they played in the conference finals 2 weeks ago. It looks like they took a 2-week break.
Did.
Yeah. And came in on firing on all cylinders. There was no shakiness to any of their games.
Rozier especially looked incredibly confident. Smart's always going to look confident.
Love that guy, man.
Yeah.
And watching him grow up in the playoffs in the second half of the season last year, you don't want to see him take a step backwards. You want to see that young guy keep getting the ball and keep getting his chance to shine, man. You want to see him keep building on it.
So this is the challenge for the Celtics. Now, I will say we're doing this one game punditry.
One game.
Which is
48 minutes.
No, it's one game overreaction stuff.
Yes, exactly.
But it was seeing all the toys under the Christmas tree at the same time. You're like, man, that's a lot of toys.
Yeah.
What do? I can only play with 5.
Right. They still won the game by what? 17 points. 15?
I know.
And you know what I'll say? The game was never really in doubt.
Nah, not really.
There was never a minute where I was like, oh, the Sixers really have a chance here. The Sixers are going to have to shoot lights out to beat that caliber of talent. Now, the Celtics, by all estimates and expectations, are either the second best or third best or fourth best team in the league. They're in that conversation. They're right there. So
I didn't look at a box score until right now.
Uh-huh.
My guess was that Rozier's plus minus was going to be great because every time he was in the game, the Celtics just played better. He's like plus 22. Plus 22 in 27 minutes.
You got 5 minutes for that guy, man.
Smart was only plus 3, but
you got to be on the court.
Yeah, look, it's going to be a work in progress. I think I was the most surprised that they relied on and played Hayward as much as they did because he looked pretty rusty. He was playing crunch time. It seemed like they were trying to show him some faith.
I think, part of that is when the game wasn't in doubt and, when they had a nice cushion, you want to see him get his timing back, get his rhythm back, and make sure that he because part of coming back from an injury that's that catastrophic is having faith in your body and having faith in what you're able to do. I know he's been working really hard, and they want to make sure he gets the game burn that he needs. That's a positive thing, though. You want him to feel that way. I mean,
it's a positive thing unless you're Jaylen Brown and you've heard the whole summer how good Jason Tatum is, and your contract's up a year sooner, where you can start thinking free agency, and you start thinking like, maybe I should go somewhere where I'm more appreciated.
I don't think that.
I'm worried about that. I'm worried about that
This
storyline.
is Bill's overreaction Celtics
right.
situation.
No, I'm just we look so good. I have to overthink it. And but I have worried about that Jaylen Brown thing this summer because it's been a lot of. Even we were talking about this. We were doing the live watch. Mm-hmm. Tatum. Next to he could be the MVP someday. Guy's amazing. Just give him the ball. He's the go-to guy. Right. And Jaylen Brown's like, I'm right here. Like I told you, his first 2 seasons where he actually had a better first 2 years than Paul George. Every statistical / playoff experience checkpoint, he's further ahead. Now you tell somebody that, like, get out of here. I'm like, all right, go find me any statistical evidence, game evidence, anything that Jaylen Brown is further ahead in his career than Paul George is. But nobody would ever talk about that or make that case.
But that also comes with an assumption that his ceiling is the same as what Paul George's is right now. Do you think that you can make that case?
I absolutely think you could.
Really?
I do. I think athletically, because Paul George wasn't a scorer at all those first couple of years. I'm saying just ceiling.
He could score though.
He could a little, but I don't. I think what he's emerged into, I think would have been optimistic after 2 years. You'd be I think people thought of him more as like, oh, that guy's going to be a great defender and he'll be able to shoot threes, hopefully.
He's just not, he's never going to be, he's not, the difference is size. He's never going to be as big as Paul George is. He's never going to be as tall as Paul George is.
Well, he's like 6'8", though.
He's 6'7", yeah.
Yeah, but Paul George
is 6'8", 6'9".
Yeah, 6'9". That's what I think. Right.
I just look at Paul George as a rangy two-way player that has Paul George is an elite NBA player. And I'm not saying that Jaylen Brown won't be that, but what I'm saying is at this point, Tatum has obviously showed
the ceiling's higher for him. There's no question.
He's a different type of guy.
Is the ceiling as high for Shaq's jacket right now or no? Did you see Shaq's jacket tonight?
He's been getting killed on the Twitter too.
Well, Shaq's now becoming too heavy. I'm actually starting to worry about how heavy Shaq is.
Tell you something. I was at
big guys shouldn't be that heavy.
I was at Shawnee's crib 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And, talking to Sharif when he was talking about everything.
Yeah.
And so Shaq comes in. Did you ever see Avengers Infinity War?
Yeah.
You see the Infinity Gauntlet? That's what Shaq's hand looks like. Shaq's hand looks out. I'm not like Shaq's hand. Shaq is so big. Like Shaq comes in there. He's like, Shaq is. It's a hilarious picture of me. I'm 6'4", standing next to Shaq and standing next to Sharif, looking like a tiny dwarf person. Shaq is gigantic. He's huge and only getting bigger, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But a lot of it seems like it's muscle, though. I'm not even gonna lie.
I remember I did a podcast with Dr. J once, and I shook his hand, and like my whole arm collapsed in his hand. His hand was like all the way from my fingers like to my elbow. I've never seen anything like it.
I believe it.
So was it nice to have basketball back tonight, House?
I'm so excited. It's just the best thing in the world to see. We
were stunned by the Ben Simmons. So House and I bet this triple-double thing. It was 12 and a half, which we're going to get. He didn't get it tonight because it was a blowout. Mm-hmm. But I don't remember what the MVP odds were. And as we're watching that game, we're like, man, that would have been a nice dark horse pick. The old Ben Simmons averaging a triple-double for a 55-win team.
He had 15 rebounds tonight.
You know, and
15 rebounds.
He had 15
you know
rebounds.
What was
and
stark?
Athletically looks just
that's
the
the
highest level.
What was a stark difference in caliber of play, and I don't want to hyperbolize too much, but there was a big difference between what I saw out of Ben Simmons and what I saw out of Joel Embiid. What do we attribute that to?
Well, Van, make your point about Joel, because I thought it was a good one. The Celtics. Or was that Jason's point? Somebody made that point.
Which point? I don't know.
Oh, it was Shay. Shay made that point. When we doing the reactions, when we ran at the end of the live watch. And he's like, everybody in the Celtics was going at Joel with like a real gusto.
They had a purpose to make sure that he did not get off. And they took it personally. People don't like the antics of Joel Embiid. I tend to like him a little bit.
Well, he's for what you do for a living. You need Joel Embiid.
Gold.
Yeah, he's gold. He's like he's a number one overall draft pick.
Yeah, he's the number one overall. He's tweeting at Rihanna. Yeah. He's doing all kinds of things that we can carry off of the court. So I tend to like it.
It's almost like he's the puppet and you're the puppeteer. And you're just telling him what to do.
I like that type of stuff, but it's annoying. Obviously, if you're an NBA player, you got to be on the court with him, and this guy's talking all of this jack. So he's going to get that from people.
I didn't like the way he behaved during the playoffs. And in general, I think we've entered this weird era of player empowerment / player people for the players, which I like. But now we're excusing bad behavior.
Well, what did you not like about him?
What did he do in the playoffs?
I just thought Embiid was a baby in the playoffs last year.
How so?
Like, when you lose, like, go stick around, shake people's hands, and be a man about it. He he's bitching at Baines the whole time, and then he just stalked off right after. It's like, come on, you lost. Like, go shake some hands, dude. I didn't like when Isaiah did it 30 years ago when he stalked off when the 91 Bulls finally
or when
beat
LeBron
him.
did it, and they killed LeBron for it.
Yeah,
remember LeBron lost to the Celtics, left the court,
2010.
Didn't shake hands.
Stick around, shake some hands, man.
All right, yeah. I get that. You know what I liked about tonight, about the NBA being back?
What?
Guilt-free sports watching. Because I'm so torn about the NFL. It's such a tough thing with the NFL, and I haven't been watching the NFL the whole year, and I'm a gigantic football fan. I love my Saints. I love them to death, but I haven't been able to watch the NFL because of everything that's been going on, and everybody else is watching it. I'm catching people telling me Patrick Mahomes is the mixture of Joe Montana, Aaron Rodgers, and Goku from Dragon Ball Z. like everybody's telling me all this stuff, and I haven't really been seeing it. And I feel like I'm missing such a huge portion of sports conversation to know that tomorrow I'm going to be able to talk about and enjoy everything, and that's dope to me. Like, I've been missing that with the NFL. The NBA is kind of giving me. I'm back. It's like it feels great to be able to watch this and not feel any sort of political deal at all, man.
That's interesting. Guilt-free. So it's so funny to me, like House and I are basically the same age, how the NBA has shifted over like the 45 years of my life, especially like when we really loved it, late 70s, early 80s. And it was like this league that was basically going out of business, and it was like, the players are on cocaine. And then it kind of flipped back during the Magic Bird Jordan. And then in the 90s, it started to flip the other way, culminating in the Spreewell thing. And it's like, these guys are out of control. And Iverson, all those dudes. And then it started to come back. And then the Artest melee happened. And then it hit that dip again. now it's like at a level I just never
These dudes
imagined.
are choir boys, man.
These
These are nice guys for the most part. Like, I mean, obviously you still get some pro, but these are nice guys.
They handle their business as well as anyone in any field that is in some sort of public eye, but also like they're just so famous and so popular. And like we were talking about Ben Simmons, like we knew all the people he was dating.
Yeah.
That was not the case in the early 80s. Like
I think
Spencer Haywood dated Amon, the supermodel. Like nobody even knew that.
By the way, that's so funny that
Great
you bring
pull
that
by
up.
him.
So funny that you bring that up. I'm looking when David Bowie passed away, God rest his soul. When David Bowie passed
He was
away,
married to Amon.
right?
Yeah.
And so I'm looking up Iman because I go on these weird Wikipedia runs where I'll look up David Bowie and then I'll look up Iman, and then I see that Iman has like an older kid that's not one of David Bowie's kids, and I'm like, oh, who is this person with? I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, huh? Well, Spencer, hey, I never knew that. Like,
Yeah.
I never knew that. That's one of those things that people never talk. I never heard that.
Sure.
I feel like my dad would have told me that, but he missed it.
I think this is the first time I heard it. I think I knew they dated, but I don't think that I ever knew they had a kid together.
Yeah, because if you took, I mean, one of the great, most fun questions ever is if you just put Wilt in a time machine and just stuck him into right now.
Loving it.
But Wilt was like taking out actresses left and right, and it was all on the down low. Nobody knew.
He was so
What was
ahead of his
going
time.
on?
He would be incredible
Wilt
right
moved
now.
out here and fucked everybody in LA for like 10 years. Every actress,
literally ahead of his time.
notched
It
it
was
down.
He'd
But
be
nowadays,
perfect for this era.
TMZ, that would be.
We would know every.
Wilt Wilt finally polished off his last
Exactly.
Kardashian.
Exactly. Because think about what Tristan was. Think about Tristan, man. Tristan, God bless him, was just on the road in DC in a club. They caught this dude on surveillance camera video
that's
acting up. Rough. You 6'10", fam. You're not gonna get away with it.
Well, here's the thing with Wilt. Wilt would be TMZ's best friend because he'd be like, "Oh, what time am I coming in here today to tell you about what I did last night?"
Yeah.
Like there wouldn't be a surveillance. Nobody would be saying, "Oh, I wonder what Wilt did." Wilt would say, "Oh, here's what I did. Here's who I was with."
You guys could be like, "Well, can we put a camera in your house just
We'll
to
be
see?"
down.
And just in the doorway, that's it. He's like, "Sure."
Yes.
Just monitoring.
So
his
you are
ring,
welcome.
Watch
Wilt's-
people going forth.
So when Wilt moved here, he bought this house in Bel Air on like the top of some mountain in the one of the Bel Air canyons, and like had this famous architect build this amazing house. The only reason I know this is the house was for sale a couple months ago.
I saw that.
And the person, whoever many people owned it, they didn't really fuck with the house.
All right.
So it's still like kind of Wilt's house.
Yeah.
It's like,
And it's just this 70s Brady Bunch bachelor pad that
Right.
was like,
oh my God.
and it's incredible. It's online if you want to go look it up, but just Wilt bringing ladies up.
I mean,
on
it's
the
literally
mountain.
like that old Larry David episode. It's literally the house that Cum built.
Right.
I mean,
Oh my
Put a-
God.
Put a black light in it and you just go crazy, man. Even now, you know who really
black light.
the black light would turn white. It
Black
would be
light.
like,
You know who really benefits from the NBA? This is a complete LA thing. You know who really benefits from like the NBA season starting? Guys at LA clubs.
why is that?
If you are at a LA club, right? So if you're going out to Poppy, Nightingale, One Oak, all of these places,
Yeah.
the moment the season ends, all the NBA players come to LA.
Oh.
They vacation, right? They vacation for a little bit. They go wherever they go, ride banana boat together, whatever, and then they come to LA. And when they come to LA, they take the clubs over.
Game over.
Take them over.
Yeah.
You think that you're doing your thing. You think that you're on TMZ and it's all swagged out until Kevin Durant walks into the club, buys all the bottles and stuff like that. But now, for a little while, the regular LA weird actor commercial type dude is going to get the clubs back.
He gets his minute.
He's going to get them back. Is you going to be
This
able
is
to...
interesting. Like the fifth cast member of Modern Family.
Exactly. You're going to
He's
be able
back.
to go in there and flex with your CW show. You're going to be able to go in there and say, listen, I'm on Arrow next week. I'm on Black
I'm on
Lightning.
Arrow.
You know what I'm saying? You're going to be able to go in there.
What about him on the Ringer Podcast Network?
Yeah, what about
that
I
one?
did a Ringer live watch last night.
all of that. You're going to be able to do all of that. You know what I'm saying? For a while, till the spring and the summer comes again. And here they come again. John Wall, Russell Westbrook, bang, bang, bang. They're going to be there.
John Wall, second time.
I mean, he was there all night. He was there all summer.
You know?
So if Wilt was here now, first of all, it'd be amazing.
It would be
Be
great.
like, oh my God, it's Wilt Chamberlain.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like he would have enjoyed this era a lot more than the 60s. In the 60s, there was a lot of judging of Wilt.
You think so? I mean, I wasn't like, was there?
Well, he wrote when I did my basketball book, I tried to read every book that ever came out about basketball, either an autobiography or whatever. And one of the best, and I wrote about it in my book, one of the best ones was Wilt, Not Just Your Average 7-Foot Millionaire, I think it was called. And it was this really candid book about like his sex life, like, and it had stuff that I remember I read it when I was, I think, 14 the first time. And it was like I was on a plane and this stewardess was giving me the eye and we ended up reenacting the scene from Deep Throat. And with stuff like that, I was like, I'm serious. It's in there.
Reenacting the scene from the vintage porn situation. Shout out to Linda Lovelace.
It was it was like a performance worthy of the classic Deep Throat, but it was like, this was like 1974.
Right. Well,
nobody was talking like
nobody
this.
Was like,
so
frowned
like
upon.
You put him in now, I don't even know what he would be capable of.
He's going for it. I
He's
mean,
a
now
candid dude.
The more sort of out there you are with that type of stuff, the more famous you are.
This is why I was saying that he was ahead of his time. Not only the swagger that went with the sort of, he knew exactly what his status was, but he also, I think he could play in this NBA and be unbelievable.
Yeah, he would have been good. Well, he's such a great athlete.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I made I had a footnote in my book about wondering if Wilt was secretly gay.
Really?
Because it was just lifelong bachelor and had cats. That was the only evidence I had.
But do you think maybe like the braggadocious nature
and the bragging
of like the 20,000 women was kind of like he doth protest too much?
Yeah, it was a little bit like if you're inflating numbers. It was a good footnote. It made for a good conversation starter under. But there's too much evidence that he wasn't.
Yeah, for some reason, you know what I mean.
There's 20,000
to the contrary.
Like for some reason, it was weird because like when I started to get a little older, I looked through my grandmother's like scrapbooks and she had pictures and stuff like that. I would see my grandmother in pictures with all of these guys, never with Wilt Chamberlain. But once I learned about Wilt Chamberlain, I asked her about it. I'm like, yo, man, you are out there in LA doing it. Because I'm like, there's a lot of black actors, Calvin Lockhart, all of these guys, Harry Belafonte, she was like around him and stuff. And she was like, no, but everybody knew about him. So everybody knew about him.
The legend.
Imagine he comes in, he's 7'3". Like I was talking about the summer, DeAndre Ayton walked into the club, walked into Poppy maybe like a month ago or something like that. And people didn't really even know who he was, but he's so tall. So if Chamberlain, the most famous guy in LA, walks into a club at 7'3", he's coming out of there with everything, man.
So it's horrible for basketball players, especially if you're 6'6" and over. You're standing out in every possible way. But even like that one time when we went out with Brady, or you weren't there for that time in the Super Bowl with Will and those guys. This was before Brady stopped going out. He's 6'5".
We're talking about Tom Brady?
Tom Brady.
So we moved to Tom Brady.
Well, no, just quickly. I moved to the GOAT.
Well, first of all, that's how you know you're around famous motherfuckers. Yeah. The time we went out with Brady, I don't know. I'm thinking about who?
Brady. I was talking about Brady Quinn.
Brady Quinn, yeah. Like that. That's the guy that I would be hanging out with. Brady Quinn. He's a realtor now or something like that.
Brady's 6'5".
Big guy.
You can't. When you're 6'4", I would say that's about the limit.
My dad says
you can blend in a little. You can crouch.
My dad says that is the limit, because I'm the shortest of all my brothers. My dad says that's the limit of normal tall.
So his move was to go, he'd find a corner, because that way people can't come with you a bunch of different ways. They can only come at you. And if you have your friends in front of you, they're the buffer. But then he would also kind of lean against the wall so he wasn't 6'5". And that way he blended in.
Brady didn't want to be noticed?
No, not at all.
You love him, huh?
Well, I mean, he's the GOAT. I think he's getting a little strange in his 40s, but that's all right. We all get a little strange in our 40s. He's getting a little weird.
He's getting a little weird, dog.
A little weird. Tom versus Tom is a little strange.
A little strange,
a little
man.
Weird.
It's getting stranger. He's almost getting kooky. I would say that Tom Brady is getting kooky. He's a little kooky a little bit.
It's still kicking ass.
Were you in the club scene? Like, how often do you go to the club scene and run into these guys?
I don't go to the club like a ton, but like the guys I play basketball with, they're party promoters.
Yeah.
And so when I go, it's to the best clubs in LA. It's to these different, and they're out there all the time.
So July is like The Super Bowl of
July.
of LA club scene.
July is the Super Bowl of LA clubs. The season is over.
The women must know. They must know when.
What?
No, when that July
Of course.
is the month.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Like you
It's a
think
Super Bowl for them.
they're better scouts than some of these guys getting paid for it. Like, of course they know. By the way, I've heard things said, Bill, that are so crazy. I've heard people say stuff like, "Oh no, he's still on a rookie contract." I'm like,
Yes.
I've heard that said.
So they have Spot Track on their phone. They're looking at salaries.
I've heard that said. No, he's still on a rookie contract. I'm like, okay, you know what I'm saying? Like, not me. I'm not fishing for that. I'm already caught.
I mean,
you know
that's
what I'm saying?
ruthless. That's ruthless.
But like, I'm not out there on the club to like meet women. I'm not. That's not what I'm on. Like, I'm already done with that. But like, I've heard you meet girls and they say, yeah, just on the rookie contract. They know how much you're making.
I never believed any of this stuff until I spent 3 straight years with Jalen Rose. And was just constantly. And then after about 4 months, was like, oh, so this really is like this.
Yeah. It most
This is
certainly
as ruthless as whatever we thought it might be. It's actually happening.
Yo, like the toughest situation is for a G League guy, because a G League guy looks like a basketball player. He walks like a basketball player. He even has some of the gear.
Yeah, he can say, I play for a team.
He can say that. But the problem is when you get to those clubs and you're in there with girls that know Brandon Jennings. Even Brandon Jennings, big deal in the club. Got a lot of money. They know he's coming.
They know he signed a contract.
You know you signed a contract? G League, dude, you ain't got it. Go back to Sioux Falls or wherever to play for the Breakers.
Well, and the club's expensive for a guy from playing for Sioux Falls.
A table at one of these places is going to cost you $10,000 to $15,000.
I mean, that's a quarter of your season salary.
And then you're going to run it up with the drinks, and your homies got to come. And then not only that, but remember, it's not just a basketball player because Puff is in there. You know what I'm saying? Like all of these other people in there. Like it's for me, being the TMZ guy is like everybody knows who I am, but I'm not a celebrity. So it's funny watching them watch me, and it's funny just watching them.
Do they think you're like the hall monitor?
Sometimes,
yeah.
Like especially pre Kanye West thing, because now
the Kanye thing changed. That removed your hall monitor status.
Took it away.
Yeah.
Now, because I think people saw in that moment that like, yo, you can trust him. There was a connection made and stuff like that. So no one would expect me to kind of be that guy. But before. Sure. I remember I'm not going to tell the name of the guys. Me and a friend of mine, he's an actor. We had gone to Sam's Hofbrau downtown, which is my Disneyland. And we went there and we met up with some other actor friends of his. And everybody was supposed to go to a different club after Sam's that would be open even later. And I'm getting ready. I'm like, forget about it. I'm going to go ahead and go. Because we have to be up so early at TMZ that a lot of times I'll go to sleep, right? And I was like, nah, man, I'm just going to come. I'm just going to thug it out. And he goes, oh, you're coming? Okay, well, I'll see you guys tomorrow. And I was like, I looked at my homie and I was like, did he just say that in front of my face? And he goes, hey, that dude has 4 commercials. He can't risk it. And I'm like, all right, cool. I mean, I'm not going to snitch on him. I've never done that before in my life. And that's not how I look to break stories, but it was a thing for sure.
I can understand that.
Of course. I'm not, you think I'm going to cry? I'm like, all right, cool. I'm going to, more for me. Go tip somebody, put a girl through nursing school.
I
you know what I'm saying? I wasn't tripping. I understood it.
House and I missed out on this whole club scene. When we were in our 20s, it was just you went to a bar and you had bottles of beer and it was dark and everybody had heavy clothes on.
Bill,
we did this whole 15,000 for. It's like it might as well be happening in Westworld for me.
Can you guys do me a favor?
Go to the club someday,
please.
What,
I've done it. I've been there before. I'm stupefied every time I've been to one.
Nah, but see, the problem is that like
go with you,
right?
Oh, I would like to do that.
Yeah, I would like to do that. Also, Nephew Kyle's in.
Nephew Kyle, yeah, producer Kyle's in.
I'm telling you, it's dope, and especially dope because Bill, everybody would know you.
Well, to a certain demo, I'm the white guy who was on Countdown.
Oh, that's very true. See,
2 years.
And remember now, like the ladies that are scouting these athletes, they don't just know the athletes.
Oh, they know the media members?
They know the announcers.
Oh, that's great.
Like I heard one girl complain about Joey Crawford one time. She knew the referees.
Oh, wow.
Remember, she's flying around.
But he wasn't in the club.
No, he wasn't in the club. That was funny. But she's flying around to different cities with athletes, so they complain about the refs, and so she hears it.
And she like sponges
Absolutely,
it.
That's
man.
great. That's great.
Yep.
I wonder if they know how much you make.
What a world we're missing out on, House.
Yeah, we missed it.
Our world was just, let's go. Can I get everyone a round of beers?
I mean, it's like
Just this whole bottle. I can't even imagine how
I've
much
never bought
money
one in my
everybody
life.
brings.
beers
a
and
lot of
shots
money.
and beers and shots and beers and shots. That was
This is
our
why
life.
Kyle goes to the dark room on Melrose.
Oh, that place
It's
is
a very
popping.
small.
Always, yes.
Oh, there you go, Kyle.
I like that place
Finally.
is popping. No,
Wow.
is it whack? Is that like is the
No,
dark room supposed to be whack?
that's his place.
Yeah, that's just there's a stink on it in this company. I don't know what it is.
No,
Bill knows. Bill knows.
Not a stink. I've been there with you multiple
Yeah,
times.
Bill
I
knows.
like it over there.
You like the parlor?
I like that whole Melrose bar scene.
Yeah.
I like the little being able to watch all the weirdos walk up and down. I let Melrose has a good energy.
Now we ride bird scooters from bar to bar.
Yeah, so those things are going to go away soon because somebody is going to somebody's going to have some sort of crosswalk fly through a windshield, and those things are going to be gone. Do they have those in DC?
Yeah, I won't miss it when they go away.
Let's take a quick break. Hey, booking business travel is ridiculously outdated, time-consuming, and costly. Thankfully, TripActions takes the pain out of corporate travel management with a complete solution that helps businesses save and keeps employees happy. TripActions, the first travel management platform designed from the ground up with the road warrior in mind. Easy booking from app or desktop, 24/7 proactive around-the-globe support, incentives for employees to save on travel expenses. Companies large and small see over 90% adoption, up to 34% savings on travel spend when they use TripActions. No wonder companies like Lyft and Sara Lee's Frozen Bakery trust TripActions with their business travel. Learn how TripActions can reshape business travel at your company today. You'll be rewarded for checking them out. Go to tripactions.com/BS, attend a 30-minute demo, and you'll get a $100 Amazon gift card. But hurry, offer valid during this month only. Tripactions.com/BS, free demo, $100 Amazon gift card. You mentioned the Kanye thing before. And now that he's officially lost his mind, I think we can all agree. But you were kind of Christopher Columbus in the early stages of the...
Maybe not,
Nobody had
maybe not Columbus.
really-
Maybe not Columbus.
Well,
I don't think I murdered any indigenous people.
who landed on territory early?
I'm trying to think. I don't know.
Neil Armstrong.
Lewis and Clark?
Well,
Neil
I mean,
Armstrong.
Neil Armstrong, I could be.
You were the Neil Armstrong.
I was Ryan Gosling.
You were Ryan Gosling as Neil Armstrong.
Right, yeah.
People hadn't really seen this Kanye thing. I mean, obviously we knew he had a ton of problems,
Mm-hmm.
but then that was kind of the moment. And if you look at this whole arc of everything that's happened with Kanye,
Yeah.
that was kind of the first point. And then it
Right.
just kept getting worse.
Yeah.
Did you feel that day?
A little bit. I think that for me, watching him in the office, because it was kind of bizarre while he was in there.
Yeah.
Because, he turned it on a little bit,
You didn't know if it was shtick or real.
Well, after a point, it became obvious that it was real. But when he first jumped off and started doing what he was doing, I think we were just all like, a little bit taken aback. But then after a while, he just keeps going and going and going. And I'm sitting in my cubicle. I'm like, what is this guy talking about?
Right.
And if you watch the clip, it really wasn't until he addressed the room and that I answered him back, because he turned around and he goes, yo, does it sound like I'm speaking freely? And I'm like, no, it doesn't sound like you're speaking anything. It sounds like there's nothing going on right now. And then, and even in that moment, it wasn't even about, because Kanye West was a cultural idol to me. And in many ways still is, you know what I mean? He for who I was, I always listen to hip hop, right? But a lot of the themes, like I could relate to the themes, but the actual lyrics and stuff like that, I couldn't. Like I was never, serving anybody. There was, I as much as I love Hove, there's so many lessons in Hove's music and Jay-Z's music that, you could extrapolate them out, but some parts of it didn't relate directly to me. You know what I'm saying? But Ye, everything that he did. Like not being able to figure out.
How old are you?
I'm 38.
Right. So you're almost the same age, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So not being able to relate to what you're going to do after college, sort of.
Well, the way he released the albums, it's almost like checkpoint. If you're near that age range, it's like checkpoints for your own life.
Right. And then remember when Kanye West says, George Bush doesn't care about black people. I was going through Hurricane Katrina.
Mm-hmm.
I was down
in
there.
the South.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of those things, I had an intense connection to him. And so when I was talking to him, I wasn't trying to sort of sun him in any way. I was just really speaking my heart to him. And
Because your feelings were hurt.
my feelings were hurt.
Yeah.
And if you listen to the past Kanye West music, and I haven't really listened to the new stuff, but if you listen to past Kanye West music, there was always so much social commentary about how people in underserved and black communities were misunderstood, were profiled, were targeted. There was always so much about that. And I'm like, what changed? You know what I'm saying? What it's not even, you don't have to stay the same. Obviously, people change, their mindsets change, their perspective change as they get older, as their world gets bigger. But I want to know what exactly changed. Like what was the point to where you deviated off of that? And you seemed so far gone from that when I was talking to him. And now we know that it doesn't really seem like he has even a hold on who he is or a grasp of who he is right now.
I mean, has there been a diagnosis yet? Has there been has there been reports of him? We know about him seeking the medical help, the medical attention that he's needed for the episodes that he's had. But this is pretty apparent. Like, he hits a lot of the markers in the diagnostic manual for bipolar behavior.
He said that he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that I mean, and
I think it even is more simple than that. How many celebrities have we seen just getting driven crazy by being famous?
It happens, bro.
I mean, this has happened over and over and over
Some
again.
shake back, some don't.
Like Britney Spears shaving her head that day at the
Britney Spears.
L'Hermitage pool, and
Right. She was
borrowing somebody's bathing suit, and
Yeah.
Michael Jackson. Like, how many times do we have to see this?
Yeah.
It's a tough one for me because Kanye was one of my favorites, but is somebody like in my family was really big. Like it was somebody we always listened to driving to soccer games, and it was my daughter's fire up music and on all our playlists. And it's just like to have your kids go, is he ever coming back?
Right.
Is he just gone? Is he just a crazy person now? It's like, I don't know. I don't have an answer.
We
Usually as
shared
the parent, you have an answer. I don't have an answer for this one.
I emailed him and he emailed me back.
Yeah?
Yeah. I emailed him because he apologized, right? He apologized for and here's the thing. Kanye West is a good person. He is. He's a good guy at heart. Like even when I was talking to him, he was listening. You know what I mean? Like he when he came out, he went on the radio station in Chicago, and he was talking about how he made people feel, and he seemed to have genuine remorse at hurting some people. So I sent him an email. He emailed me back, and he explained every single question. Because what I asked him is that I said, "Yo, you seem to be a good person," and the question then becomes. I went through my entire history with his music and his cultural influence, like I just did. And I says, how do you address good people who you disagree with as strongly as I disagree with you? And I said, I don't really even know that I agree with the substance of your apology, but how do I address this with you like a hero of mine? And he answered all the questions and then put me on some other emails, and we were going back and forth. And then he just went left again. Like whatever he believes politically is one thing, but this stuff is bizarre, man. And I'm not gonna pretend like this shit isn't
it's
bizarre.
aberrant
I want to
behavior.
be. That's the thing. This is a person with a diagnosed mental illness,
Right.
and so he needs help. He needs professional help and a network that can help him, and not to indulge, some of the avenues that are self-defeating for him, like going to the White House. That's self-defeating. I don't know what the status of his what medicine that he's on and everything like that, but it's not helpful for him, his own existence in the world, to be going through these self-defeating episodes. I don't think. What do I mean?
That moment legitimately to me was Anakin Skywalker submitting to Emperor Palpatine. That moment was legitimately, the whole black community was Mace Windu. The whole black community was Mace Windu. And we were trying to stop the Emperor. We thought we had him. And Anakin cut our arm off, kicked us out the window, and then submitted.
But it's an illness. He
But
has
I-
an illness.
But I don't even think he has the standing like that anymore, does he? Like if he had
It
done that 6
depends.
months ago, it would have been
Right? Like,
different.
no, you're probably right about that. But
Because I think he squandered that connection even before this in a lot of different ways.
But the frustrating part is if you listen to a lot of the things that he was talking about while he was talking to President Trump, those things would all be helpful for the community. Like if you're talking about infrastructure, bringing factories back to places like Chicago, Compton, South Baton Rouge, Gary, Indiana, where you can bring jobs back to people where they can sustain these lifestyles and provide for their family and all that. That's all great stuff. And then at the end on it, you just fucking shit on it. You shit on it by surrendering and kowtowing and saying to Trump, like, you're like my dad and stuff like that. And it's like, once again, I'm sure there are a lot of people listening to this that love Donald Trump. I want to get into a political thing. But Kanye West is like, for me, it's just insanely disappointing. It's one of the, culturally, it's one of the major disappointments of my life.
yeah. Well, going back to like the celebrity part of it and fame kind of breaking somebody's brain almost a little bit. You think about like how tough his life was and a lot of what he sang about in his music. And he always would mention the car accident and, but also even how he got his first album and how hard those extra 2 years, like he's going around and, it was just such a great story.
For sure.
Right up until a couple years ago. But you go all the way to like 2013, 14. It's really one of the great 12-year stories of any artist. Like this guy who repeatedly did the music that he wanted to do,
Right.
that actually put real thought into how he put it out. Each album had a theme.
Right.
The way he dealt with fame was he was candid about it and he would get angry about it, but it was never like off the rails.
Right.
And then something shifted. And, I don't know whether it was getting involved with the Kardashians. I'm not talking about like the curse of the Kardashians, but just like going into that family and how that fame becomes a machine, which was never what he was really about.
It was.
And I don't know if that like messed with his brain. Like all of a sudden now he's this pawn in this reality show game. And he's, I don't know. It just seemed like he lost his way. And I think he knew it. And I think that was part of it.
So Kanye West, you guys heard the song All of the Lights?
Yeah.
So you heard that song. That song by itself, I think he said took 7 or 8 months to make. So one song, maybe the finest achievement maybe in hip hop, like a fantastic song. That one song took 7 or 8 months to make. I say that to say that the story of Kanye West prior to this last 2 or 3 years that you're talking about was of someone supremely dedicated to artistry.
Yeah.
Kanye's life was about the art, whatever it was. If it took 6 or 8 months to get a song right, that's how long it took. You know what I mean? If it took this amount of time to get your shoes right, that's what it took.
But I think that was my single favorite thing about him.
Loved it. If you listen to it, if you after the album he wants a different sound, bring in John Bryan to do the work on him with him. Like bring in all of these people, collaboration, artistry, purity, and it seems like a 180 from that now. It seems like shticks. It seems like publicity stunts. It seems like we're talking about everything other than the music.
Well, it started, I remember when he started talking about how fashion was the most
That was the
important thing
beginning
to him.
of it, yeah.
Well, it was like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And he was like, I care more about this now. And it's like, what are you talking about? You're one of the most talented people who's done music the last 25 years. Like, how can this be more important than that?
Yep. He was bringing up all of these names in fashion that we didn't know. Like it was like he was telling me about he was telling Sway about how he couldn't get Renzo Rosso and the rest of the guys from Margiela and Diesel. And I'm like, yo, who the fuck are these? I don't give a fuck about these dudes. Who the fuck are these guys, man?
Well, I mean, House and I, our generation, Cobain was the most talented guy in that whole generation. And he lasted, what, 5 years?
Who?
Kurt Cobain.
Oh, I thought you said Kobe as in Kobe Bryant.
No, Kurt Cobain.
By the way, I listened to Nirvana.
But it was it. He just had demons and that was it. He was gone.
Came home, Kurt Loder was on the TV, said, like, I came home and I was turning on the TV because I wanted to watch MTV's The Grind. So I was watching, remember that?
Yeah.
Eric Nice.
Oh yeah.
I wanted
Took
to watch.
his shirt off all the time.
Get
that shirt off, Eric.
But there were chicks in the, whatever. I was watching and Kurt Loder's on the TV. Kurt Cobain's dead. I'm like, what?
Not a shock though.
Well, I mean,
That was the thing. It was like not the most shocking news of
I was shocked
1993 or
at
1994.
13, 14. I was.
Yeah.
for sure.
It was
Yeah.
just like it was headed the wrong way, and you could see it.
He was battling addiction from well in advance
Oh, my God.
of any sort of success, the commercial success.
and it's
with the
really
music.
destructive relationship.
Did you guys know
that
that
came
though?
in-
Did you guys know?
Yeah, we knew.
See, I didn't know, like, because you guys, I guess, are around my big brother's age. Like, I guess I didn't know nothing about heroin. And as far as his relationship with Courtney Love, I just see him at the MTV Awards.
There was a what was that? There was a crazy interview with him and Courtney Love that was the red flag interview. I can't
Yeah,
remember
you're
what
right. I
magazine
don't
it was
remember it
in, but
either.
just like just a ton of crazy quotes but the lyrics of the songs, like
Mhm.
when somebody's putting out a song called "Rape Me," like it's obviously they're not
Right,
100,
right.
they're
I
not
got
batting
you.
1,000
Yeah,
in life
yeah.
at that point. But yeah, it's tough, man. I think
Nirvana was so good.
I think some of the things that makes great art is pain
Mm-hmm.
and loss and suffering and having to strive for shit. Like once people become successful, it becomes a lot harder to. It's like the Eddie Murphy syndrome.
To kind of dig
You're in
into
Bobo
it.
Hill, you're making $30 million a movie. It's tough to get a feel for the people.
Yep.
You
Very
know,
true.
Kanye is like going in the Kardashians. Like, now are you going to write songs? What are you going to write songs about? You're super rich, you're crazy successful,
Mhm.
and you're married to somebody who's richer than you are.
Yeah.
So what's your art? What's your struggle?
Yeah. It's tough. It's just, and it.
Jay-Z's had the same problem last fight, like the last Jay-Z album. It's like,
You didn't like 444?
no, just like some of the songs, like some of the stuff he was writing about. It's like, well,
Well, for me,
are you in the mix anymore, Jay-Z?
I think the thing with me, what Jay-Z was able to get back to was actually the fact that he had so much trouble in his personal life with Beyonce and his
Right.
family. I think that stuff was able to kind of center him. And also, Jay-Z, if you're having a conversation about who the greatest rapper of all time, there are a lot of guys you can bring up, but if you're having a conversation about who the most successful rapper of all time is, there's only one dude, right? And so for him,
Although Drake's inching toward it.
Drake is inching toward it.
Drake's
in
had
terms
a really nice 10 years.
of raw popularity. I would argue that Jay-Z, in terms of cultural significance, dwarfs Drake.
I would agree.
You know what I mean? But Drake is gonna
Drake's-
when the numbers are all tallied up.
I feel like it's become the music version of MJ LeBron,
LeBron, I was just about to say.
where like it's like, no, fuck that. Nobody will ever be MJ. Fuck you. I don't want to hear it.
Right.
And then LeBron just kind of wore us down.
And you start to go,
And then after 14 years, like, well, body of work, I don't know. Like Drake's
Mhm.
kind of quietly slapping years together.
he is.
And it's going to be after 15 years, we're going to look at each other and go,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm with you. I just think Jay-Z.
So to me, this is the fundamental question about Jay-Z and LeBron is because to me, when you look at Michael Jordan, he has such control over everything on the basketball court when he was at his peak, right? When he was at his peak, you just had zero doubt that Michael Jordan and the Bulls were going to find a way to do it.
Right.
You just don't have that with LeBron James. You don't. And you
Hal Snyder leading the MJ. I'll take it to my grave.
Yeah.
like you don't. I mean, I love LeBron James.
Right,
love
me
him.
too.
You just don't have that with LeBron James. And by the way, like the same questions kind of like exist with Drake. Drake is a fantastic talent, but the reality is that Drake does not have one seminal body of work in terms of a hip hop album. So he doesn't have one. Everybody else that we're talking about in hip hop, right? The guys that are on the Mount Rushmore and then the next four and stuff like they all have one piece of rap that the generation cannot live without. They have one album that you have to have heard, right? Wu-Tang has that album. Outkast has that album. Hove has it. Most guys have it a couple of times, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Drake doesn't have that. And as many fantastic moments as he has and as many numbers as he has, what's the Drake album that where you have to be like, yo, did you ever hear this? This changed everything.
I was talking to a friend of mine about, because I saw Drake, it was the first time I saw him with nephew Kyle, actually, and my son on Friday. I was so impressed by what a charismatic performer he was, because it's
He's
basically
fantastic. He's a
it's this
fantastic
giant
talent.
stage, and it's just him.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I was thinking, like, how many people, like, just in history could, in the Staples Center, make a stage that's basically the size of a basketball court, but there's no band.
Mhm. And rock
he's
that
just
whole
out
thing
there
on your own.
and have the charisma to carry it.
Right.
So I was like, that was the one thing I was surprised by. I was surprised Drake was that great. And my friend said, yeah, but Kanye did the same thing and his songs actually meant something.
Yeah.
And he could carry the stage the same way, but when he sang shit, there was meaning behind it. Drake's more like, it's a party, but it's like there's no kind of meat.
Drake is fantastically
He's
talented.
fantastic.
Yeah,
but
like,
he was right. There was no meat to the songs. It was
Yeah.
like, he's getting let me get the left side. Now I'm going to get the right side.
Right.
And it's like a party and he's
Right.
the host.
Mhm. But Ye has songs that have made me like question my spirituality. He's had songs that made me look into sort of just all different type of aspects of myself. Like it's music that represents a specific moment in time. And that's kind of what Drake is doing. But by the way, here's the deal though. It doesn't matter. It don't matter. The game is different now. Like a lot of people, he even said it when he was talking to LeBron, a lot of people are holding on to what he thinks is an antiquated version of what matters in hip hop. He's just racking up numbers. At the end of the day, when LeBron James like retires and he owns all the records, there are going to be generations of people that look at him and go, how could this guy have not been the greatest?
Well, and it's also a
basketball player of all time?
generational thing because I noticed it with the Ringer staff. If it's like under like 30, LeBron's their guy, period. And not only that, they don't even want to hear about MJ. It's like, fuck you with your old man stories about MJ. LeBron's my guy. And for our generation, it's like, fuck you with LeBron stuff. Like MJ's the guy.
Yeah.
But it's really funny how there's a generational divide. Can you feel that in like, you're in Washington, D.C., so you're like no man's land for LeBron has no real, but LeBron has no real relationship with the Wiz. MJ passed through for 2 years, but it's not like people, whatever. But can you feel that with the under 30, over 30?
Well, it manifests itself differently because the city's changed so much in just like the last one generation. The city's changed, gone through a pretty radical reset in terms of the demographics of the city. There's a lot more youth, just really coincident with the arrival of Obama. So you have an entirely different kind of perspective. There is a DC, and the DC region has a long storied basketball tradition, still generating many of the very best high school basketball players that go on and play all over. We can go through the whole list: KD, Oladipo, everybody, right? Jeff Green's back
Rudy
to
Gay.
Washington. Rudy Gay, of course. Like, I mean, a long list of DC-based basketball talent. And I think all the old heads, that old generation there's no debate. There's no question. Nobody's talking about, everybody respects the hell out of LeBron, but MJ has 6 titles.
And was like the sheriff.
Yeah.
Never
He's
lost.
just like,
Once he figured it out, he never lost. Different time, but at the same time, and I love LeBron, and LeBron is everything that I want a contemporary athlete to be, but it's different, man. It's just different. Bill.
I'm a LeBron Kool-Aid drinker now.
You are.
I just think he's such a great role model.
He's the guy.
And he just works his ass off. And the worst thing he ever did was the decision, which is like stupid. Who cares?
Yeah.
Like for all that's been put on him since 2002, I think when we're talking about Kanye now and how fame can change you. And LeBron, it's been the opposite. It's like, it's made him stronger. It's given him strength. Strength in his neck beard.
And he definitely has a neck beard. He leaned into it. It's so hard for a guy like that to lean into expectations. When he leaned into the expectations of him, and he even raised them off the court. LeBron has set a standard off the court that everybody in sports is trying to everyone in sports is trying to be as relevant off the court as he is right now. And really, to be honest with you, that is going to be the legacy of his life even more than basketball. Basketball is going to pale in comparison to the career off the court that LeBron James is going to have with Maverick Carter and all of those guys. It's going to be.
And the other thing is, I did a panel with Maverick and we were talking about when those guys came up in like 05, 06. And it was like LeBron starting a company with his friends and everybody's reaction was like, uh-oh. Oh boy. Yeah, he's starting some of his buddies.
Mm-hmm.
This will be a disaster. And they had to fight this prejudice is the wrong word. What's the word when people are just looking down on them?
I mean, dismissiveness.
Dismissiveness.
Condescension.
Condescension.
But
Like,
I mean,
it's just like, you
like-
guys are you're bringing your buddy Maverick into
Or
a
your
meeting.
posse? You bringing your posse around?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the Phil Jackson. The famous Phil Jackson.
Right. Like his posse.
Look, they're not throwing a no hitter, but I think they've made some strides, and now we're in this world where every famous player is going to have their own content company, which I think is going to be hilarious.
I think it will be too.
There's going to be some good bad content companies.
I just want to let
coming
y'all
our
know
way.
they don't drink Merlot in the barbershop. So I want you to just make sure y'all know that.
That's
If y'all
good.
go to-
Now I
y'all
remember
go
that.
to if y'all go to a black barbershop, you're not gonna find no Merlot. I love the show, but Tommy, I know you can hear me. I love the show, but chill out. Ain't drinking
Is this
no
the
wine.
only barbershop where the barbers don't actually talk?
No. In most barbershops you go to,
In
my
most
barber-
barbershop, it's only the barbers, right? The
Right.
people aren't
My
saying
barber,
anything.
My barber, we talk. My barber comes to my house to cut my hair now because he's been kicked out of several different barbershops around LA. True story. Like, and so he comes to my house to cut my hair. When he cuts my hair, I don't talk. I stay completely silent for the entire time that my hair is getting cut. Do you know why? Because if I start talking to this motherfucker, it'll be an hour and a half, 2 hours before I got shit to do. I gotta go to sleep. I gotta be up early.
Yes.
So I stay completely silent. Meanwhile, in the shop, the barbers never say nothing. I think I was talking to
Not very realistic.
I was talking to y'all, you know Charlemagne, like my
Yeah.
brother. So I was talking to my brother Charlemagne about it, and he said a dope concept would have been if LeBron and Mav just popped up at real barbershops and just
And they put
talked.
hidden cameras.
And or this just real cameras to get everybody to sign a release and talk to the people and stuff like that. Not saying that the shop isn't dope, because it is dope. It's a dope ass show. I liked it, especially the last one was fucking fire. But ain't nobody drinking Merlot in the barbershop.
I'm still surprised that you like Jay-Z's last album that much.
444, everybody liked it. Everybody liked it.
I just can't. I can't.
You talking about his last solo joint, not this joint that just dropped with Beyonce. Which one are you talking about?
I was talking about the last one.
Which one? With
The one that with Beyonce.
Okay, I like that one too though.
I don't care about Jay-Z and Beyonce's romantic problems.
Okay.
Is it okay if I don't care about that? I don't even care
They're
about
not
my
for
own
you.
friends' romantic problems.
They're not for you.
I know, but we're invested.
You're invested in the relationship.
Yeah.
That's the royal couple in some
I don't
ways.
want to live in a world where Jay-Z and Beyonce are divorced. What's that about?
I was watching Flicking Channels the other day, and Austin Powers was on, and she was in Gold Member, which I had totally
She
forgotten.
ruined the
Wow.
Gold Member.
She wasn't good.
She ruined.
I gotta
Gold
say
Member.
though, she looked good.
Right. She looked fantastic. I remember I got into
She was
it.
bad in that though. Not a lot of sexual tension with her and Mike Myers.
Nah, didn't work. Chemistry was a
Didn't
little
really
off, right?
reverberate through the TV.
Foxy Cleopatra. I'm a whole lot of woman. But she, Beyonce and Jay-Z are an institution. By the way, that gives couples because one thing that I don't like is some of the speculation that like people don't have problems in their relationship. People judge Jay-Z and Beyonce and stuff like that. I know people in my hood and like where I'm from that have gone through way worse stuff than that. But it's good to see them still together. And so I am invested in it. I like that.
I'd have more, but let's save some for the next time you come on.
Gotcha.
There's so many topics.
Yes.
Plus, we got to get to Damien Chazelle. House, any last thoughts?
You're
You're hungry.
Where are we going to dinner?
Is that your last thought?
That is my last thought.
Nephew Kyle, someday you can $15,000 clubs. How much is it for wine bottle service?
So if you it depends on what club, what table, and what night. So if you're at, let's say you're at
Saturday
It
night's
sounds
bad.
like 15,000 is cheap.
Let's say you're at, and shout out to Dev and Mark and all of them because I'm gonna get this wrong, but let's say you're at like Poppy or One Oak. Well, Poppy is hot now. Let's say you're at Poppy, you want the main table. It's like a Friday or it's a big deal. You probably gonna spend like $10,000 for the table, sometimes more. All-Star game, All-Star weekend, you might have to spend $60,000.
So just the table is $10,000?
Well, you get the bottle
Or
service.
you get
with it.
one, but what if I want like 10 bottles? So that
You gotta keep
jacks up.
buying them,
Mm-hmm.
and the bottles are gonna be.
God, I'm so old.
You're gonna keep buying them. I've never done this before. Anytime you've seen me sipping on, like I'm the
You're at
You're
somebody
the
else's.
beneficiary.
yeah, I'm at somebody else's. And by the way, that's how you know I'm not in these clubs trying to get women because women don't like guys like this.
Yeah.
Like you try to you try to grab the drink. I'm like, no, girl, it's my turn. I'm about to don't touch that. It's my turn. I'm about to I'm gonna make my own screwdriver. Then after me, you can go. Thank you very much. Put your breasts away. and then I make my drink.
We almost out of orange juice. Come on,
We're
Chip.
almost out of orange juice. Yeah, you might want to tap the girl and tell her to go get some more. You know what I'm saying?
Remember when we went to Miami the Super Bowl weekend 2010?
I remember. Yes, I do recall that.
That we were in that whole club scene. It hadn't really gone
You
out.
hear that? 2010.
2010.
There we go.
This
in Miami.
decade, I'm out of the loop.
Bill,
There we go.
Once my daughter became old enough to judge me, I had to tone it down. Van Lathan, this was fun.
I loved it, man.
Promote
Oh yes,
The Red Pill Podcast?
The Red Pill Podcast, man. We just interviewed Jay Prince. That's up right now. Nick Cannon is coming in tomorrow. So I'll do Nick Cannon. That'll be up Tuesday. So the Red Pill Podcast, wherever you get your podcast, Van Lathan's The Red Pill.
And speaking of promotion, I went on House of Carbs. Is that going up this week?
I think
Be up at
Pasta
midnight.
bar?
tonight.
Oh, Joe House and I, we tried to figure out why the pasta bar isn't a bigger thing.
I don't even know what that is.
So you go to a wedding or, a charity event or something, and for dinner they have a pasta bar.
like a pasta buffet type of deal?
Yeah.
It's like
That's
a buffet
why.
for pasta.
I like that. That's
Yeah.
why I'll fuck with that.
Well, we
Yeah.
like it too, but we had some ideas to make it better. So we did that on House of Carbs. If
Oh,
you
I'm
like
gonna listen to
pasta, don't listen if you're a vegan though, because I might have
You
done
said
some
bad things
flybys on the
about the
vegans. Just for fun. I just think they're a little sensitive sometimes. So check that out. Coming up, Damien Chazelle first. Let's take a break. All right, before we get to Damien, let's face it, guys are terrible at taking care of their health. Studies show 70% of guys who experience erectile dysfunction don't get treated for it. That's bad. The thing most people don't realize is that ED is like a check engine light for a man's body. It could be an indicator there's something more serious going on, like a heart issue or diabetes. Thankfully, our sponsor, Roman, has created an easy, discreet way to get checked out by a doctor, get treated for ED online. It's a one-stop shop. Licensed U.S. physicians can diagnose your ED, ship meds right from their pharmacy to your door. You don't have to wait in waiting rooms, deal with any awkward face-to-face conversations, make any uncomfortable trips to the pharmacy. Just visit GetRoman.com/Bill. Fill out a brief questionnaire, chat with a doctor, get real FDA-approved medication. If recommended by your doctor, it's all prescribed online, delivered straight to your door in discreet, unmarked packaging. Guys, go talk to the doctor. Erectile dysfunction, a problem guys don't tackle, but it's really important. And now with Roman, it's really easy to take care of it for a free online visit. Just go to GetRoman.com/Bill. All right, Damien Chazelle is here. Sean Fennessey is here, editor-in-chief of The Ringer. Do a little three-man podcast. First Man came out this weekend. It's been out for 3 days. This is I guess it's your third major movie that's come out. What's that experience like the first weekend? Do you sleep? Are you just checking constantly from people involved in the movie how it's tracking? Are you one of those people, or you just kind of send it out?
I think I always intend to just send it out and kind of close the blinds and go on to the next thing, but I'm never really able to. I just sort of wind up immersed in the nitty gritty, which maybe it's a side of myself I should embrace and not try to fight it. But for whatever reason, I stay neurotic and OCD and involved the whole way through. I'm kind of in it from the beginning till the end.
What were you most worried about when you released this? Like the length of the movie, or would people come out to see it, or like when you're thinking your neuroses, what's like popping out on like Thursday night right before the movie comes out?
It's usually a whole host of things. I mean, I think with this movie, we were definitely conscious of the fact that it's, it doesn't sort of engage in a lot of the, maybe more sort of expected historical epic tropes.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, I think the real relief for me was just getting the movie made at all, was kind of, being able to, we worked with Universal on the movie, and they were incredibly and I would say surprisingly supportive of kind of what we wanted to do with it, and the intimacy we wanted to bring to it, the documentary-ness we wanted to bring to it, shooting a lot of it on 16, not trying to make Neil Armstrong something that he wasn't, trying to kind of respect how soft-spoken and taciturn and introverted he is, but that makes him very much not your conventional movie hero.
Yeah.
So all the things that kind of interested me, they were on board with. So I think I went in first into the movie with a lot of trepidation of just being able to make the movie I wanted to make, and so definitely once we got to the finish line, I was relieved that the movie up on the screen was the movie that I'd kind of dreamed of and envisioned.
Yeah.
It's not always the case. But then, very quickly, I mean, we finished right before, like 3 days before we premiered at Venice. So it was kind of right away, you switch your mind from the stress of making it to then the stress of putting it out into the world. And I'm just the type of person that gets stressed at every single screening, every festival,
Right.
So in a way, like the theatrical release is kind of just one of many stressful milestones for this movie or any given movie. So
Are you in the theater, or are you one of those people that walks around the town as it's being screened?
No, I'm not. I was going to say I'm not that crazy, but then again, that's not. I wouldn't call that crazy. It's just different levels of OCD-ness.
What would be your move if you released a movie, Sean?
What would be my movie?
Would you stay in the theater, or would you be one of those like you just leave and go outside and just wait for people to come out?
I think I would probably lock myself in my house, just constantly updating
I think that's
Twitter.
what I would do, too.
I'd be going crazy. I don't think that would be good for me.
Because when the people come out of the screening, you must just be trying to read their faces and overinterpret every reaction.
I know that I would do that, so I try to not be anywhere physically close to where the people would come out of the screen.
Yeah.
So I like it's why Q&As actually are never my favorite thing, because there's always some version of having to confront the people who've just seen the movie, and it's no longer this invisible mask that you can kind of project onto. You see what it is that the movie does. I sometimes I'll force myself in certain screenings to sit in the audience while the movie plays, like a festival premiere or something like that. And
well, you wanted
that's
to see
always
this one on
stressful.
the IMAX, I'm sure, right? Because that's
I made sure.
Unfortunately, I saw it on the iPad. I'm going to see it in the IMAX, but I don't think the iPad was how you intended.
iPad, IMAX, so they almost sound the same, but they look a little different. I did get to see it on. Certainly when we were finishing it, we were finishing it on IMAX, But then, that was one of the few screenings I kind of forced myself to sit through, was when we first screened on IMAX at Toronto. I never handle screenings particularly well. I'm just usually kind of a sweaty mess with my hands sort of dripping during most of it. So.
Sean saw it on the IMAX.
I did. That seems like the right way to see it. That's my guess.
Yeah. I mean, I not that there's a wrong way. I don't want people to think.
Don't
that
sleep on the iPad, man.
IMAX.
It's
Maybe
just
the
some
best
intense
possible
moments.
way.
But maybe the iPad right now is as close to a wrong way as you could get.
iPhone's probably number one worst. iPad's
at least you're one removed from that. It's good.
Yeah.
On the list of eyes, you're number 2 from the bottom.
Could you feel it when, especially that first scene, you're trying to capture, this is crazy that we're sending these dudes into space in basically tin cans. Could you feel that in the big ass theater?
Yeah, it rumbles like crazy. The sound is unbelievable. I mean, how did you go about making that feel as close to the real thing as possible?
That was the goal. I mean, it was one thing that I found that actually, ironically, it's sometimes by limiting your choices, you actually can make people feel that they're getting an even more immersive experience. So for that first scene, or for some of the launch sequences, just limiting ourselves in the capsule, not sort of giving the audience the safety of views that the astronauts or pilots wouldn't be seeing. I think that it's a simple choice, but I do think it just helps connect on a visceral level the audience to the person in the cockpit. So suddenly you see everything they see, you hear everything they hear, you interpret everything as though you are in that cockpit. And so then from there, it's about using the sound to kind of complete the three-dimensional picture. Because the camera is limited in what it's seeing or not seeing, the sound then can almost be even more heightened. It can be even more intense, more, sort of oscillating between exactly what the pilot would actually hear, just, pure authentic machine sounds relative to that craft, and, heightened, sounds that could augment the emotional feeling of it. Like we used animal sounds, we used sounds from warfare, guns, explosions, lions roaring, elephants stampeding, the whole kind of the whole 9 yards. But you sort of bake them into the sort of the diegetic sounds, and you create a kind of, I'd say, an emotional reality for the audience.
The last three movies you made, sound was like one of the biggest characters in the movie.
Definitely, yeah.
Is that an obsession of yours, or is that a coincidence?
Well, I think, I think I'm really interested in just the kind of plastic elements of filmmaking, the form, just especially when you strip it down to its elementals, sound and image, and just seeing how those two things work together. It's probably why I have an affinity for sort of long stretches of dialogue-free filmmaking. I think that's another probably through line through those movies. Just that sort of idea of pure cinema where you can set up a situation where an audience doesn't need dialogue and they can just sort of be immersed in the primal ingredients of movies, the ingredients that have been sort of enthralling audiences since the birth of cinema.
That's why Rocky IV is such a classic.
That's
10-minute sequences with no dialogue.
That's exactly it.
Sly knew what he was giving the audience.
I guess we talk on this show all the time about how they don't make a lot of movies like this anymore, and the idea of doing something especially that is like this subjective and not showing the traditional vision of the space that we see or the moon landing that we see must have been somewhat difficult to convince people to do and to give you all this money to do. I mean, do you have that sense that it's harder to get movies like this made, and did you have a hard time getting this movie made?
So I guess in a way there were certain kind of lucky circumstances with this movie because the producers and Universal had the rights to this book, Jim Henson's biography of Neil called First Man, and so basically I kind of I started working with a screenwriter, Josh Singer, to adapt the book, and we were lucky that we were pretty. I sort of made a point of being pretty open and honest and transparent about what I wanted the movie to be right off the bat, and I have to say I half expected either Universal or the producers to kind of react initially like, no thanks, that's not what we're looking for, and pretty much I was open about the things you're talking about, that these space sequences or flying sequences were going to be super subjective, that the camera wasn't going to leave the cockpit, that even for the rest of the movie everything was going to be sort of up close and personal, as though a documentary crew was sort of stalking the characters and getting close to their faces, and that was going to be the style of the movie, that it was not going to be a sort of it wasn't going to be your typical giant sort of myth-making space movie. It was going to kind of go against that or try to. So I basically laid all that out on the table. Again, half expecting them to say, thanks but no thanks. And they said, great. They said, that sounds great. Go ahead and do it. And
why do you think they trusted you to do that?
Which I was surprised by. Well, I think in retrospect, actually, they were, and I think this is one of the reasons why the rights to this book had kind of been, there was a period of time where they had the rights to this book, and it was sort of languishing, that it wasn't really going anywhere. And I think it was partly just because they didn't want to do the traditional biopic, so I think there was actually this appetite to, okay, if we're going to do this, we have to find some way to do it differently. And
there's also the shadow of Apollo 13, right?
And and the right stuff and all. Yeah.
It's like if you're going to make the same type of movie we've seen when people go into space and there's the wide shot of everybody in the control center celebrating. And I've already seen that movie.
Exactly. So I think, but a lot of times studios want to just see the movie they've already seen. And so I had a lucky situation with the folks at Universal that they were actually very much on board with doing something different. That said, it's still a process of, where you have to just then, once you're all on the same page intellectually, then you got to figure out logistically how you do it, and this one was tough, because of the way we wanted to do it. This wasn't going to be a, giant budgeted movie for what it was. And we weren't going to have a ton of days to shoot it, so we had to shoot it in less than 60 days, and we had to find a way to kind of, marry the sort of quotidian life, the home life of the movie with the space sequences, find a way to do the space sequences practically. I wanted to do those in camera, which is its own kind of, can be its own sort of, knee-breaking kind of ordeal. But again, I think you get a lot out of it as a result. Yeah. So, we wanted to shoot a lot of the movie on 16, but you've got to be careful, especially we knew we were doing an IMAX blow-up. Going from 16 millimeter to IMAX it's not generally done because 16 is a very tiny gauge and tiny format, and IMAX is very huge. But we liked that idea of setting up kind of a Wizard of Oz moment on the moon, where you could go from the smallest film format there is to the biggest. Well, I guess we could have done Super 8 if we were really ballsy. We would have done Super 8 to IMAX, but instead we did Super 16 to IMAX. But anyway, you're trying to kind of wed ourselves to certain things like that we knew would be either difficult to execute or difficult to sell. But at least with the sort of overall support of everyone, the studio, the crew, myself, everyone being in agreement that, okay, even if we fall on our face, at least we got to try to do something different here, because as you say, otherwise there's no point. What
would you say was the hardest part? Was there a moment when you were like, oh shit, why did I do it this way? Like I can't pull this off.
The first day we tried to do kind of our space sequences. I mean, the first scene of the movie, this X-15 flight, was our first day of kind of set pieces. Like we had done all the on the ground, quote unquote normal stuff. We broke for a hiatus during the winter break. Came back, started working on sound stages, and that first day. And we had kind of spent a lot of time in prep figuring out how we were going to do this, and we had a full scale replica of the airplane built on a sound stage, and it was on a gimbal so it could move back and forth. And in front of it was a big LED screen which was projecting all the stuff that basically Neil and the audience sees out the window. So it was all set up. We had looked at what the LED imagery was going to be. We had looked at the craft. We'd figured out our angles. It had all been storyboarded, and I show up, and after, we had just done a month or so of shooting where we were banging out multiple scenes a day. It was really quick. And suddenly we show up and a whole day passed without pulling off a single shot. And that had never happened to me before, where we were supposed to shoot a third of the scene that day, and we never rolled camera because we could never even get into a place where we could roll camera because everything would break down. Like as soon as the craft would start to work, then suddenly, the screen wouldn't work the way we needed it to, or the angle would be off and you'd see off the set, or, the gimbal would start malfunctioning, or these spacesuits. I had always taken for granted how difficult spacesuits are. Like I realize now why movies tend to these days just digitally create the visor. It's because once you put a visor on, once you fully enclose someone in a helmet, then you got to figure out, they have to breathe. So you got to get, oxygen tubes in there. They have to not overheat. You got to get cooling tubes in there. But then when the oxygen is hissing, how are you going to hear their audio? So you have to have the oxygen and the audio in this really tricky balance that changes every time they move. It takes them half an hour to even get in and out of the craft. So Ryan just wound up sitting in that craft a lot between takes because it was too much of a hassle to get in and out. The whole thing was just hair pulling. And eventually the next day we finally popped a few shots off, and that felt like a victory. And, and we hit our groove, but we were starting off at such a deficit in a way. I mean, that was the hardest. That was the moment where definitely it felt like, oh, maybe we should have done this with, the digital visor and green screen and just half the buck, and we just fix it in post.
And Gosling stink-eyeing you through his little visor. Why'd you do this to me?
I will always be thankful to him that because he had many instances where he could have done that, and he was gung-ho the entire time. In fact, I think he was even more adamant about not using green screen than I was, because I think he in his mindset, it was like, you know what, if I have to wait around, fine, but at least when I'm doing the scene, I'll have stuff physically in my view to act off of. At least I'll actually be able to. And we were able to do kind of full takes. Once we finally started shooting, which was a thing, we were able to kind of, that scene, for instance, carry him through, being under the B-52, dropping, breaking through the atmosphere, bouncing. We were able to kind of run it almost like a little stage play in the cockpit. And then we would run it from different angles over and over. But, he was kind of able to, was sort of the hope, act it the way you would act a normal scene, even though we tried to set it up so that for him at least, he could kind of forget he was on a soundstage in Atlanta and just imagine, for the most part, because he wasn't seeing camera equipment or a green screen or whatnot, he could imagine for the most part that maybe he was hanging from a B-52, 40,000 feet above the air and shooting into space.
I mean, it's kind of an amazing testament to space travel, the fact that it was so hard just to recreate space travel for a film. It's just unbelievable.
That was my biggest takeaway from the movie. I guess I had never really thought about how ridiculous it was that we even tried to do this in the 60s.
Yeah.
And
I hadn't either before I started.
just like how random it was. Like easily every one of these could have just gone terribly.
Absolutely. It's a miracle that they didn't. I mean, it's truly it's the strange kind of event or part of our history where the more I learned about it, the more details I got about it, the more incredulous I became. Like the more astounding the feat became.
I guess it makes sense because you see TVs from the 1960s compared to now.
Yeah.
And then you think like, oh man, we tried to send people to outer space with,
with this technology.
with the knowledge that we had in
the time
1965.
they were doing their calculations with pencil and paper. Half the time they were using slide rules and like. I always remember the first time I saw some of these crafts, in real life. Whether it was probably the first one I saw was in a museum, but especially getting to come up close to them, and they are so unreassuring.
Yeah, they're rickety, right?
If you're in a place where you're going to fly them. Oh yeah,
yeah,
and so small. I mean, I think that was one of the big things that Nathan Crowley was the production designer, and one of the big things we talked a lot about was. Because it can be hard to communicate scale in a film. It's hard to communicate how big something is, and it's hard to sometimes communicate how small something is. And so trying to, because I felt like I had never, in all the space films I'd seen, I still found myself surprised when I saw the craft or some of the crafts in person. They still were smaller than I had expected, even having seen some of the footage. And it's just because, the frame, the angles, it's hard for you to sense the three-dimensionality of a surrounding. You always kind of imagine it a little bit bigger. Things always come out a little bit bigger on screen. So we tried to find ways to create those crafts to scale and fully enclose the camera in them as much as possible. So shoot a lot of POV, kind of straight POV angles. Sometimes the DP himself would just kind of crawl in a spacesuit into the craft and just shoot, a tiny little 60mm camera out the window and panning around. And it just helped give you a sense of just how close your face is to the console, to the window, to the other guy, to the door that comes down over your head. We just tried to emphasize all the things that would make it feel as claustrophobic as I think it really was.
Everything was rickety back then. Because I was watching Love Story a couple months ago with Ryan O'Neal.
Mm-hmm.
And he takes her to his parents'
That was a big comp for us.
He's in that. He's in that awesome Porsche.
Yep.
From he just like the classic. You would see this online, but he's driving and the thing's like, and then he's shaking, and that's just what we had back then.
It's crazy too how risky it was because you point out in the movie, which I think we forget, that there were a lot of people who were not excited about this and thought it was a really bad idea and a huge waste of money.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of forget that. And
honestly, it was really important to me to get into that in the movie, but we could have spent even more time on that because there's this misconception, I think, of that era having been all about space travel and everyone being gung-ho about this sort of idealistic, notion of it. And, with the exception of the very beginning of the 60s when we were still sort of in that fresh Cold War with Russia mentality. And then I'd say with the other exception of literally just the moon landing itself, not even lead up to launch, but literally just the landing, that like those few days in the summer of 69, approval for the program in general hovered around 50%, if not below.
Is that why you put that song in the movmovie? The way,
song? So that song that's a real song by Gil Scott-Heron from the period, and that's just one example of. I remember instead we had a speech that was kind of modeled after some of the more famous op-eds that we'd been reading from the time from national newspapers and publications and things kind of voicing similar concerns. And then we actually Ryan found this Gil Scott-Heron track that seemed to kind of articulate all of it so much better in such a kind of compelling way. But then, it was very easy to find, for example, footage of, archival footage of whether it was protesters or, famous people like Kurt Vonnegut going on TV saying this is a waste. There was a real debate that I think has been forgotten in the glow of the moon landing. There were so many
other things people were angry about back then. That late 60s was rough in general. This was in there, but I mean, man, it was like so much
which makes it even more ironic,
I
think, in a way that and poignant maybe that, that event, that sort of fleeting moment of hope and unity that we think of as the moon landing happened in the midst of everything else. That when you think of 68 and 69, you think of assassinations, you think of the Vietnam War, you think of riots in the cities. 69, it's Altamont, Manson, the same week that
Me being
that
born.
they walk on the moon is Chappaquiddick. oh my God, even worse.
Another tragedy.
I was about to say Chappaquiddick, but you trumped me with your birth.
2 iconic moments in New England
Really
history.
was.
Your birth and Chappaquiddick.
I like to think the moon landing and me being born were the only 2 things that saved 1969.
Wait, so were you born in that month? Or?
I was September, yeah.
September,
I was
September
like
69?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think I was right after. What was the exact date?
It was July 20th.
Yeah.
So you would have been, you would have been born right when they were probably doing kind of their world tour.
My mom said
were
we
born
watched
right
it.
in the
I was
glow
in
of
her
it.
stomach. But I mean, it seemed like every single American was involved somehow at that telecast. I would say that's probably the most watched
They've said
television
that, right?
event we've had.
There's hundreds of millions that were viewing it.
You said
Yeah.
400 million?
The estimate's about 400 million people worldwide.
I'm trying to think of one thing that could give us 400 million people watching at the same time right now. Is there anything?
50-year-old Tom Brady winning the Super Bowl?
I really hope not.
No?
Maybe this interview. I don't
Yeah,
know.
possibly.
I'm hopeful.
It's going so well.
Look, let's not sell ourselves short. You know?
It could happen.
Well, I'm curious about. So there's a lot of controversy, obviously, around the movie. You also had controversy with the La La Land Oscars moment. I'm wondering. I don't care about the controversy, honestly, but I am interested in what it's like to be thrust into a controversy like this. You seem like a very nice person trying to make good movies. When you find yourself in a weird moment like that, what is that like?
Well, yeah, it's always a little strange. I mean, I guess the with this movie, I think it was especially strange since, because the controversy, as I understood it, was revolving around the flag on the lunar surface, which again confused me because we do show the flag on the lunar surface several times, and then I sort of understood that it was a little more about actually seeing the flag the pole of the flag being physically planted, which Neil and Buzz did together. It took a long time for them to plant it in. And I guess, to me, it was what was important at that part of the movie, because it's not a movie just about Apollo 11. It's a movie about the 8 years that lead up to it. It's a movie about how we got there, not what we did once there. That once we were there, the emotional climax of the movie to me had to be, and this is purely an aesthetic consideration, not at all a political one, had to be Neil's private moments on the moon.
Yeah.
And so that's also why we don't, get into the experiments they conducted together or Buzz's famous words about magnificent desolation or anything like that. We just sort of stick with Neil. And I was fascinated by this very unknown part of the moonwalk, which is otherwise the most famous event maybe ever, which was Neil going off to this nearby crater by himself for about 10 minutes. And no one really knows what happened during then, what he did, because he never told anyone about it. He wasn't on comms. And the idea of someone going all the way to the moon, which is itself such a lonely journey, and but then taking the time to be truly alone on that surface. I don't know, there was just something both poignant and poetic and even tragic about it for me, and especially learning what he was going through at that time, those 8 years of his life. I mean, the unfathomable amount of loss and grief that as a human being he must have been going through in that short period of time. It just begged a lot of questions for me of what is going through your mind if you're coming off of that sort of time in your life and you're the first person standing on another celestial body, looking back at Earth. It almost felt like Orpheus traveling from our world to Hades, going beyond where mere mortals are allowed to go, going to, the undiscovered country, going to the underworld and turning back and looking back the other way. There was something it's real life and yet so mythological and fairy tale and fantastical that it felt like that's where the emotional climax of the movie had to lay.
It seems like you can't make a movie these days without some sort of controversy.
Yeah.
That's kind of just what the internet is for at this point. It'd be like, how can we turn this into something?
Well, in some way, the good thing is that, to take the silver lining approach is that, it was actually encouraging to me to sort of find, for example, how much people still have deeply emotional connections or associations with the moon landing.
Yeah.
Because I think that was something that we sort of struggled with as well while making this movie in terms of things we were worried about. Of how do you make this is 50 years ago almost. How do you make it feel relevant? How do you make it feel timely? And so to find that there still is this sort of visceral emotional connection,
and some conspiracy people too.
They're still out there too. Yeah, I've encountered some of that too.
Since the movie came out, has anybody shown you new evidence of the conspiracy?
So you missed the part in the movie where Kubrick comes over and tells them
that
to
was my favorite part. Yeah,
yeah, you liked that, right? Yeah. No, I actually found while we were shooting it, I think we all had a moment where we were having such a hard time, specifically doing the moonwalk sequence and the moon landing, and then thinking, okay, we're having this hard a time recreating literally like 4 minutes of this event, but in '69 they're supposed to have recreated the better part of several days worth, or on the moon at least 2.5 hours of live stream, basically, live broadcast to everyone in the world, recreation of this with the technology they had in '69. I'm actually of the viewpoint, and this has been communicated by someone more eloquently than me back in the past, responding to a lot of these conspiracy theorists. Technology-wise, it actually was easier back then for them to send people to the moon than to pull off the hoax that they're accused of pulling off. So
I've been between 90% and 100% believing the moon landing for the last 40 years. Usually 100, but lately I was at 90 because I think I was on the Reddit conspiracy thread. I'm back at 100.
Oh, you're back at 100.
I'm back at 100.
I was a little worried there for a second. That 10%.
Because there was always a 10% of me like, we could barely do anything in the 60s. How did we pull this off? How did we send a spaceship to the moon and yet we didn't have color TV? So it was just a little shred of
Well, the irony actually, what's fascinating about, I think, the moon landing again is that the type of, and it's why kind of, again, to my point that in a weird way it was easier to do it than to fake it, is that it doesn't really mean it was easier. What it means is that it's different kinds of technology required for each. The technology required to go to the moon was and this is what's shocking about it, looking from today's standards, was really analog. It was really actually old-fashioned, what we would definitely call now, but that you could even call in the 60s, old-fashioned rocket technology. I mean, there was, the most cutting-edge and brilliant rocket scientists behind it, but essentially what they were harnessing, the basic ideas of power that they were harnessing, was really old-fashioned, was really sort of rooted in simple mechanics, and by contrast, the technology required to broadcast a signal that's faked to everyone around the world, from a signal that can't be, that is mistakenly tracked as from the moon, et cetera, that kind of technology, which maybe could be doable today, that was actually not really around at that time. So
the reality is there's probably like a 62% chance this should have worked. Right. Yeah. If you do this 5 times, maybe 2 of the times something bad happens.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Neil himself gave himself a 50-50 of landing.
Yeah.
That's not to say 50-50 of them coming back home alive, but certainly they were very prepared for the idea that they were going to go to the moon, try to land, it wasn't going to work, and they'd have to turn around and go back. Whether Neil would have actually aborted or just taken it all the way, no one can know for sure. But they were very, they went into it very hopeful, but I'd say also very kind of realistic about what the odds were.
You can't abort at that point.
And it was that
way.
You're
too close. You're right over the moon. You got to keep her going at that point.
But you point out how unknown everything is. There's that moment when he's describing just the surface of the moon, the texture of what it is, because we just don't know.
We don't know he's going to like sink in it.
Yeah. How far down is he going to go? What does
I
it
never
feel
thought
like?
about that. I didn't know, like, his foot, like, what if it's just his leg just gets sucked down?
Oh, yeah. No, they were really worried about that, that the LEM itself wouldn't even land properly, that it would just sink in.
Yeah.
They were trying to get as much information about the moon, especially that part of the moon, before, through satellite imagery and the earlier missions and whatnot and probes before they landed. But there's only so much, especially again with the technology that they had at that time. Again, at that time, it was a time where they were probably better at flying than they were at recording, data, recording information, filming things, streaming things. So there was so much unknown about, even down to Quarantine. I mean, Quarantine was because the Andromeda Strain, Michael Crichton's book, came out the year before and became a national sensation and prompted lots of people to start going, oh my God, we're sending people to the moon. They're going to bring back a disease that'll kill all of us. And so Congress tried to calm them down and came up with this plan that honestly wouldn't really have worked anyway if they did bring back a deadly disease, which was, we'll put them in quarantine for 21 days.
We saw that with the Johnny Depp movie. What was that one? The Astronaut's Wife.
That's right.
Yeah.
He comes back. He's not the same. Something's wrong.
Were you prepping with the Astronaut's Wife before this as well?
Look, this is what happens in space, man.
You don't know what's going to happen. You might get invaded by an evil being.
Careful.
You're only 33, right?
Yeah.
And you've made 3 memorable movies already. This is really annoying. I think when I was 33, I was making like $40,000 a year and trying to break into. How did you do all this so fast? Because usually directors in their 30s is when it starts to happen, but you've already made stuff happen. Like, were you always one of those people that was ahead of the curve, or was it luck?
No.
What was it?
I mean, a lot of it.
I know that's a tough question, by the way, but I just like, you're young.
No, tell us how you're a genius.
A lot.
But you're crazy young. Like, this doesn't really have a lot of parallels in the history of Hollywood.
It's a lot of luck. I think, and this again goes back to luck. I mean, I think I had the benefit of having a very one-track mind growing up. So I can't remember ever wanting to do anything different. I've always wanted to do movies as long as I can even remember. I think before I knew what a movie director was, I sort of wanted to make the movies I was seeing. Initially, they were mostly animated movies, so I thought I'd be an animator, and I was drawing a lot and trying to figure out how animation worked. And then, they became live action movies. I wanted to do that, but basically, I always wanted to do this and nothing else. And so it meant I was sort of, when it came to being a normal, well-rounded kid, I maybe was lacking in certain other areas, and maybe still am. But at least, the benefit it gave me was never having that moment of doubt or uncertainty as to what track I want to. Like, I was going to make movies work no matter what, and I didn't know if they would work or when they would work, but it was all I wanted to do. It was all I knew how to do.
Wasn't that what Paul Thomas Anderson told us? Didn't he give us basically the same
Very
answer?
similar story, yeah.
It's like from age 16, he was just like, this is what I want to do. I don't want to do anything else.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
and he
started really young.
Yeah, he started young too.
Yeah.
So maybe that's it.
Very
Lessons for the kids out there. If you're not doing this when you're
be singularly
16,
focused.
Yeah, gotta be 16.
Don't have
throw
a
yourself
life.
in.
Don't play sports, and just have a one-track mind. To the annoyance of everyone else.
Quick break to talk about FanDuel. Football season is well underway. I already have major regrets about one of my fantasy teams and all of my daily fantasy performance. But here's the thing. The great thing about daily fantasy, you get another crack at it the next week. That's why I'm so excited to be playing on FanDuel. You get the excitement of researching and building your team each week, regardless of the outcome. It's never been more fun or easy to play. I've been playing in their Gridiron Pick'em contest every week. It's a free contest. All you need to do is pick winners, no spreads, then $10K split amongst the top pickers. Trust me, I've tried other DFS sites before. If you're not a fantasy expert, FanDuel clearly the place to play. Plus, new users get a $5 bonus when they make their first deposit. You can do it right now. Come play with me at FanDuel.com/BS. And while we're here, G Suite is a suite of cloud-based productivity tools that includes Gmail, Docs, Slides, Sheets, and Drive. These tools improve your work life, both in terms of your experience and the outputs you create. Hence their new campaign, Make It with G Suite. When you have 20 identical versions of a document labeled final and no clue which is the latest, make another version. Name that one final, right? Well, with G Suite by Google Cloud, a range of work apps like Gmail, Docs, and Slides let you make real-time updates to the same document without having to keep track of version after version of a project. And since all the tools are cloud-based, your whole team can access the same document and work on the same page. At the same time, to find out more about G Suite's productivity tools, visit gsuite.com. Make it with G Suite by Google Cloud. Once again, gsuite.com. What about being in charge of, dozens of people at the same time? And the human interactions you have to have with actors. Actors are difficult. Like, how do you learn that when you're in your 20s? Like, you're working with people like J.K. Simmons, who's been in there for 30 years.
That's actually the trickiest thing of all. Is at least for me, for a natural introvert like me, I think is that aspect of it. I can only say I learned that by doing it.
Yeah,
and so I think. Even my student film days of kind of trying to rally the troops in those small circumstances, that helped prepare me for, doing the Whiplash short was the first time. I remember being terrified my first day on that set. That felt like my first real day, even though it wasn't the feature. It was literally just this short, but the short had been like enough money had been put together for the short, like $10,000 or something to have for 3 days, have, a real crew, and that was my first time not just working with my friends or fellow students with the camera on my own shoulder or something. It was my first time working with a crew. And so winding up on set, J.K. Simmons was in the short. So, which was really nice of him to agree to, he basically did it as a favor. So giving him direction or trying to sort of organize the crew, working with the assistant director, all that stuff was so new to me. And yeah, I think the first day I had like a mini panic attack, nervous breakdown inside, and I tried to hold it together and kind of made it through the first day. Second day was a lot easier than the first day. Third day was easier than the second day. And, and then in a way I'd kind of had been broken in a little bit. Like the feature, ironically, as hard as it was a little easier than the short, just because I had gotten the feel of it a little bit. Because
there is a moment on a movie set, you show up, you're the guy.
Yeah, which I really, it's one thing when you show up with your two buddies and they're the only ones you're making the movie with, and then it's an actor that you're also friends with, and and you're the guy. That's so different than showing up to a bunch of strangers, or people who are there for, not because they're doing a friend a favor, but are there for a paycheck or are there for, it's just a different atmosphere. And it took me, that's why I guess, my big advice to people, has been or would be to try to kind of work your way up if you can, that there's I think I benefited from learning from mistakes on situations that were controlled enough or small enough that those mistakes weren't disasters. So the short prepared me for the feature. Whiplash as a feature was low budget enough. It prepared me for La La Land, which was a little bigger budget, still not huge budget, but and it kind of you work your way up from there. So at least that's how I kind of learned how to do it. It's the only way I think I've gotten any sort of skill at that side of it.
So now you're finally ready to make Terminator 6.
Yeah, that's the next. I think that's the next natural
Black Panther 8
extension.
But so obviously, La La Land and First Man have some things in common, but mostly they're very different. But they both seem like pretty significant challenges. They're two kinds of movies that are maybe not as big as they once were 20 or 50 or 70 years ago. When you're going into a project, are you looking for something that you say, I don't totally know how to do this and I want to try it? It has to be a challenge.
Yeah. I think even maybe the more movies I do, the more I feel that way, because it's, it's hard enough to kind of to make a movie. You invest so much of your sort of energy and time, and so many other people do too. It's such a collaborative thing. So you're asking a ton of people around you to invest that same amount of time and energy. To invest all of that into something where everyone feels like they've seen it before, or it's just going to be sort of kind of one more notch on the belt, or just or a paycheck or whatnot. I wouldn't know how to do that.
So you're not going to make a rom-com when a guy and a girl have been friends for a long time, but now one of them's developing feelings for the other? That's not in the works?
Well, look, I mean, you could probably redefine that genre in a way that would be really exciting.
Let's put it in space.
Let's do it. Yeah. Let's do it with aliens.
do it with aliens and musical numbers.
2 serial killers. And
some
one
serial killers, and then I'm all in. But I think it's... I think it's just like you never know, or at least I never know, if a movie's going to work out, if it's going to fall on its face or if it's going to have a life. But it's all the more reason, I guess, to just make the act of doing it itself count. You know what I mean? So you want to give yourself a reason to get up in the morning and work as hard as you can and try to inspire people around you to work as hard as they can. So you at least want to have the ambition the hope of doing something that's different or that's a little, off the beaten path or a little out of the norm. It doesn't mean you'll succeed, but at least it's like, it helps with the willpower, I guess. So that's kind of, I think, to answer the question of kind of whether I like those challenges. I think that's why I like them, because it's if you fail, at least you tried. So
Yeah.
and whether you succeed or fail, it's you learn from it that way too. I guess I want to. It's such a privilege to be able to make a movie. Period. So I would hope to kind of just personally learn as much from each movie as possible and pull as much from it as possible, just for my own growth as a filmmaker. So
I think that's really good advice.
Yeah.
That's something I've tried to live by the last 10 years or so. Like, you're never going to know unless you try,
right.
unless you take a risk, and you have to be okay with the risk not working sometimes.
Yeah.
And when it
can't
doesn't work, it's like, all right, it didn't work. What do I learn from having that not work?
Yeah.
You take things from that and you put it to the next thing.
Absolutely.
But I think most people are just afraid to kind of try. What was interesting about when you did La La Land, that became a much bigger. I'm glad you're here because I've always wanted to ask you. It never seemed like that movie was meant to be as big as it became.
No.
Like, from your standpoint, right? That was like your second film.
Yeah.
It was this intensely personal film. It was super different. And all of a sudden it became this kind of monster.
Yeah.
And it was like, did he mean for that to happen?
No, yeah, I think La La Land was sort of the epitome of because I was talking this a little bit on First Man, but I'd say La La Land, more than any project I've done, was the epitome of making the movie was the victory for us.
Yeah,
Like, I remember
just getting it done.
I remember our the day before shooting began, the day before principal began, we all went out for celebration drinks, because that was we didn't wait till wrap to celebrate, because who cares? The fact that we had made it to the day before principal photography, where you can reasonably assure yourself that no one's going to pull the plug. You've made it to 24 hours before, so maybe a week before the plug can be pulled. But once you're at that day before principal, you're probably okay. And we all just thought it was amazing that after 6 years we had finally kind of gotten to the starting line. And now we wanted to execute well. We wanted to make a good movie and have a good time and have it work out. But just getting the chance, the lucky chance to make it was such a win for all of us, that I think everything after was, I'd say either a surprise or kind of almost unnecessary icing on the cake. I mean, it was great. We certainly enjoyed the ride, but it wasn't, certainly wasn't why we did it.
Were there any downsides to that success? Like, having a couple years removed from it, does it set some sort of unreasonable bar? Because that movie was really an extraordinary success, given what it was and how you made it.
And also had a rewatchability to it that I don't know if you anticipated or not, but my wife watched the movie 5 times.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I think a lot of people did.
Yeah,
I
it's a
think it
part of
became
people's
a
lives.
go-to movie.
I was, again, I mean, all that stuff surprised me a lot. I mean, I remember we test screened that movie and it did not test well. We tested twice and it tested badly both times. So so even once we were in post-production, there was this big question of, is anyone going to see this? Is anyone going to like it? We knew that we liked it, actually, you never really know if you like it, because you always only see the problems. We knew at least that it was a reflection of our tastes, in terms of going after from it, I mean, the good thing was that I was already working on First Man. If I had not had anything kind of in the pipeline, so to speak, and so kind of the La La Land release ends, and then I'm left sort of standing with kind of an empty slate and trying to figure out what to do next, then I do kind of shudder at the prospect of what that would have been like. I'm not sure how I would have acted. I think the best thing I did for myself was to make sure I had something already in the pipeline before La La Land even came out. So as soon as La La Land was done, even while we were kind of doing the promotion and stuff, I was spending the other half of my time working on First Man and working with the writer on the script and working with Ryan on research and all that stuff. So that kind of helped funnel me and not be maybe not have so many of the negative consequences, as you say, can happen of what La La Land became.
Well, then you ended up in the craziest moment in the history of the Oscars. But you're deep in First Mate at that point. You're just able to transfer it.
Thankfully, I was.
Yeah.
I was. We were, we hadn't started hard prep yet, but we had started crewing up, and the script was, being fine tuned. We'd started kind of traveling to meet members of the family and whatnot. So so that was all kind of, that train had sort of left the station a little bit.
No one last minute tried to convince you to make another musical?
No.
It's happening right now.
But yeah.
He's getting emails.
We did we did joke that we would put musical numbers into First Man, but
you kind of do.
But it never.
There's some musical moments.
There is a dance.
Yeah.
We did think of that as that was going to be the closest we got, the closest that we doffed our hat to that genre. But no, ironically, Neil Armstrong himself was really into musicals. I mean, you'll remember there's a scene in the movie where they're kind of asking Neil about his, what he did in college, and learning that he did the musical review in college and all that. And I always wonder if certain people watching it think that that's just something that I sort of invented in order to be like an Easter egg to myself or something. I kind of cringe at the idea of that. Whereas the reality is, no, Neil himself, that's all true to Neil. Neil was, I promise that wasn't my intervention. Neil was very much a musicals fan, a Gilbert and Sullivan fan, as it turns out. And who knows? Maybe if certain things had gone differently, he might have been the new
Gene Kelly.
New Sondheim, new Gene Kelly. Yeah, who knows?
Do you feel like after, what's it been, how long has it been since the Oscars? Like a year and a half? That people don't even remember what happened anymore? They just remember something crazy happened? That they don't remember if you ended up winning or losing or...
Also,
because you won for Best Director.
You also won. So it must have been doubly strange.
Yeah, I mean, because that was my second time at the Oscars, and both times they've been very... and maybe it's because I grew up kind of, watching the Oscars on TV. So I sort of experienced the Oscars so many years as the thing that was seen on the TV box. So then actually being there, it was a weird kind of, felt like Pleasantville or Purple Rose of Cairo, or one of those movies where you sort of step through the proscenium and you're just kind of looking around, and it was weirdly like surreal meets anticlimactic meets overwhelming meets underwhelming. Like, it's all these things at once. I felt that both times I was there. So it's kind of, in a way, when weird stuff happens, as did happen, that night, it's almost weirdly in keeping with the surrealness. Like, I think it was maybe less of an utter kind of needle scratch shock for me than it was just sort of an outgrowth of. I mean, the Oscars themselves are very weird, and it helps to kind of be reminded of that sometimes.
Yeah,
that's what Kimmel said when I did the pod with him like 3 days later.
Oh, yeah?
We've been friends for a long time. And he didn't even really fully know how. I was like, this is like going to be in the first paragraph of when like you retire, and they'll be like, and he hosted the famous Oscars. And he's like, really? It's going to people will still care? And I'm like, yeah, this is going to be like the number one weirdest thing that happened at the Oscars.
I am surprised that people still ask, but maybe it just needs to be one-upped. Maybe we just need to figure out some even weirder
Let's do
thing.
it this year.
Yeah. I know it can be done.
You need to wear a spacesuit to the Oscars.
If they can land a man on the moon, they can find a weirder way to end the Oscar.
How much thought do you put into the big picture part of your career? Because I've always found some directors, like, they just on to the next project, almost like Bill Belichick. And then other people like really study the great directors of all time and the choices they made, and then they did this, and then they zigged this way. And do you think about that stuff? Which one are you?
I do. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I didn't. I think again, part of my movie obsessed childhood and adolescence and whatnot was reading, biographies of directors and watching all their, their entire filmographies and trying to learn where things went right, where things went wrong. But of course, I don't know. But then at the same time, it's when it comes to actually deciding what am I personally going to do next, it does at the end of the day just for me at least, boil down to just a gut level of what I'm feeling at that particular moment.
Yeah.
It's part of why I've had a hard time. I've been asked a lot with this movie, what made you want to do this? Especially, you're the musicals guy or movies about music guy, and why take this left turn? Why do a space race movie? And I've said various answers, but none of them probably really get at the real answer. The real answer is I don't really know. I just, for whatever reason, at that moment in my life, it grabbed me. Something in Jim Henson's book, something in the idea just grabbed me, and it was a new kind of affection I had for this material because I didn't grow up being obsessed with the space race or anything like that. I didn't really grow up wanting to be an astronaut. But it grabbed me, and I sort of went with it. And so as much as I try to think about the bigger picture, sometimes you can't. It only gets you so far, I guess.
So you just go to what grabs you.
Yeah, I mean.
But do you have a
That makes
checklist
sense.
that's like, I need to make my war
sense
film, I need to make my biblical epic, I need to,
Yeah, you got to make your war film.
my war film. No, I not really. I will say that again, but I think this comes back down to gut level. That I usually tend to want to do something that feels at least tonally like the opposite of what I just did, and that's not at all kind of an intellectual reasoning. That's purely just emotional. Where so with Whiplash, I it felt right after Whiplash to do something kind of much more hopeful and romantic and sort of in love with love and with movies like La La Land. And then again, conversely, after La La Land, I think in some ways the confection aspect of La La Land helped inspire the opposite in First Man, going back to the sort of documentary route and trying to go gritty and grungy. So I think it's as simple as you get a little tired of one kind of tone or one sort of mood, and you want to switch it up.
So Fast and Furious, you have your eye on, maybe. Fast 11?
Yeah, but that would maybe have to be
Like 5 years
one
from
movie
now.
removed from
Yeah.
First, because
That's
First
right.
Man has its kind of action
True.
sequences. I can't do that again, so I've got to
Maybe like 5 years from now.
maybe yeah, but yeah, check back in 5 years.
Sean, do you think Whiplash was a sports movie?
Yeah, we discussed this. Yeah,
We had a big argument about this like 2-3 years ago. And I
really?
can't remember what we decided.
Well-
it has all the elements of a sports movie. It's just instead of sports, it's drumming.
Yeah.
But it's the same beats and
Totally. No, I mean I
and it has the
I kind
same
of thought of
feeling
it
of
that
like
way.
ultimately it's about self-competition. It's not about the competition surrounding you. It's
Yes.
just it's about whether you can do it yourself. There's something amazing about that. I love that movie. How do you feel about that movie now? So many years removed from it. Can you see it and say this is good, or do you only see the flaws?
I haven't looked at it in a while. I mean,
he's like Denzel. He doesn't go backwards. That's what Denzel said. He doesn't. I did a podcast with him. He doesn't go
I
backwards.
wish I had more than that in common with Denzel. So he never looks at old work. He just
Not
sort of-
interested.
It's
Ethan Hawke was the
not
opposite.
that
He was so
helpful.
ready to go back and
Oh, yeah?
relitigate every choice he's ever made. And Denzel was like, I don't go backwards.
Yeah, I guess I could see both sides. I mean, I have at times gone back. I try, but I kind of don't like to do it too much. I think Whiplash was. I don't know. It was fun making it. It was. I'd say it was still the most kind of nakedly autobiographical thing I've done. Not that it's strictly autobiographical, but just sort of in terms of where it came from and what I was thinking as I was writing it. So I think there was something kind of liberating about that. And one thing I actually haven't done in a while is write. I'm sort of excited right now to sort of sit down and write again. That's kind of something I've been wanting to do in a while because I wrote Whiplash after I'd written La La Land, and First Man, Josh Singer wrote, and so it's actually been since basically the making of Whiplash that I've kind of written something. So
What's your
I
process?
might wind up revisiting it just for that reason.
Go like Starbucks in West Hollywood and just bring the laptop and you're just off for 6 hours? Where do you write? What do you do?
Well, my process begins with a huge amount of procrastination, which I try to group under the umbrella heading like research or inspiration.
Yeah.
Read a lot, watch a lot, listen to a lot of music. Try to kind of figure out a playlist of both movies and songs to sort of get myself in the mindset. But then, yeah, eventually I'll just sort of, sometimes I write by hand, but usually, yeah, it's just on my laptop.
By hand?
Whether at home or at a coffee shop.
Like in a journal?
Yeah, sometimes.
Interesting.
Is that-
I didn't know
is that-
your
is that
generation
weird?
still did that. Notice how I'm making it seem like you're super young.
Well, sometimes...
Under 35ers, they don't really
Under
use
35.
the pen and pencils.
The thing with the pen and pencil is that I guess what I'm always trying to do with writing is avoid the terror of the big blank page staring at you.
The blank Word doc or the
and
blank final
there's-
draft.
Yeah, exactly. Something about the blank final draft or blank Word doc is sometimes more intimidating than just the blank loose scrap of paper you happen to have or a notebook. It's also why sometimes this is actually a trick that I would recommend to some people. Sometimes I'll write chunks of a script as an email draft to myself because it's a very kind of small little, window browser if you don't open it up big, and you're just sort of, so you can, after a few lines, think you've written a lot because you're kind of filling your
I like that.
and then you sort of keep going, and it's all about getting started. Once you're in it, once you have 50 pages of a script, the next 50 are much easier, but getting past the blank page is and I'm probably like all writers in this regard, is terrifying.
Do you base the character on pieces of different people you know, or is it just somebody you create from thin air?
No, yeah, it depends. I mean, certainly Whiplash, people were based oftentimes word for word on people I knew. Other times it's kind of composites. Some people I know, some movie or book characters, some just kind of all meshed in. A lot of times, obviously, there's a lot of me, and whether I like it or not, in certain characters I write. Certainly, the Miles Teller character in Whiplash. It was in some ways a somewhat easy character to write because I related. So it's a mix, I guess. But it always helps, I think, to have something to be, even sometimes it could be as simple as writing for an actor, I find. Whether you wind up casting that actor or not, by the way, but just having a face in mind. Like sometimes I find it helpful very early in the script writing process to just like put a little lookbook together that's just like faces. And it's either faces of, whether it's known actors or people out of fiction or historical figures or whatnot, you just kind of just to visualize a little bit of a gallery of faces. So you kind of are writing to, you're not just writing to a character name, on a final draft doc. You're writing to an actual flesh and blood human being, and then that can change completely.
Yeah.
When I first wrote J.K. Simmons' character in Whiplash, I was picturing a sort of basically someone I'd say James Gandolfini would have played, like a New Jersey Italian American, kind of blue collar turned intellectual sort of guy, because that was very similar to a music conductor I'd had growing up, and that's who I was writing. That's who he was. So J.K. initially, first working with him, meeting him, was the polar opposite of physically what I had in mind. His kind of the thin, tall, muscular, bald, black shirt, like that whole kind of look that J.K. brings to the movie was so different from what I wrote in my mind. But he's saying the same words, and of course now I think back to, I can't think of anyone else in the role than J.K. He made it completely his own. But it's just a good example in a way that it doesn't really matter where you wind up. It just helps me to get started out of the starting gate, to have something physical, something visual to write to.
Well, that's why Fast and Furious 11 is going to be great for you. They
I've
already
got
had the characters.
Yeah, exactly.
Start writing.
Can you give us like a
I
sneak
think you're
peek
totally
of
right.
the
Of Fast and Furious 11?
Yes, please. Tell us
it
the plot.
It's on space.
Interior room, night.
Yeah.
If you could
The door opens.
Yeah. Can you give us a sneak peek of the maybe the playlist of movies or music that you're diving into right now for whatever you're going to do
Oh
next?
yeah.
I've been rewatching a lot of right now I'm on a big early Truffaut kick.
Oh, wow.
It's been a while since I've watched like Jules and Jim and Shoot the Piano Player. Those movies are so great, by the way. I mean, they are so much more just radical and revolutionary than I had remembered. And I grew up, I loved Truffaut. One of the earliest books I read, once I could understand it as a kind of budding film geek, was the Truffaut-Hitchcock book of sort of transcription of their interviews together. Most formative film book I've probably ever read. Reread it like 10 times. And but anyway, Truffaut's amazing. I've been rewatching a lot of his stuff. Rewatching Fellini. Recently rewatched Mean Streets. which is another kind of, again, movie I, always thought was awesome, but man, it's even more awesome than I remembered.
So you're going to be making a gangster movie about a filmmaker who has many women in his life.
Yeah. I'm in.
How'd you know?
Great.
But no,
Sounds
but
exciting.
And they race cars by night, and it's Fast and Furious 11. It all ties together. I'm going to do the Truffaut Fellini version of Fast and Furious.
I can't wait.
That sounds amazing.
Just wait for it.
I'm in opening night. Goodfellas I'm still a cable guy. Like I still like scrolling through the channels. Goodfellas is on all the time.
Well,
and
of
I've
course,
just been
it's
watching
the
it
most
constantly.
rewatchable movie ever made. I mean,
Thank you very
I
much.
just
That's
can't.
Exactly right.
We have to do we do a rewatchables podcast where we just break down movies we've seen a million times.
Oh, cool.
I'm officially ready for Goodfellas.
Okay. This is big news. Just so you know, we've been trying to convince him
I've
to do
been.
it for years.
Right now, I'm halfway through a rewatch of Casino. Have you seen that recently?
Yeah,
that holds up.
Really
too,
good.
I gotta
Sharon
say.
Stone.
Oh, amazing. She's incredible.
Part of the appeal of Sharon Stone in that movie was we didn't know that she had that performance in her.
Exactly.
But now we can know because we've seen Casino for 22 years. But
yeah. No, but like,
in the moment, it's like, wow, really?
Yeah, you do have to rewind a little bit to sort of the shock of her performance in that. But also, she's just she is in a way because you'd seen because so much of the rest of the sort of leads cast are people you've seen in Goodfellas and earlier Scorsese movies. She is she's the new element in that movie, and just it's amazing to watch her wreak havoc with those characters, but also kind of with the movie itself. Like she steals the show in every sense of the term. It's such an amazing performance to watch.
What movie have you seen the most times?
I don't know. Maybe the Umbrellas of Cherbourg. I mean, that's probably still my biggest go-to. Certainly, La La Land wouldn't have been possible without it. I have to kind of rewatch that relatively regularly, just to get my regular dose of it.
Were you expecting that answer, Sean?
I remember you talking about it before La La Land. And obviously, there's huge aspects of it in La La Land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you didn't spend too much time focusing on the space movies before First Man.
No, actually, what's funny about the space movies is that it's, I felt like, and this was different than when I was doing La La Land, because with La La Land, I spent most of my time before La La Land watching musicals. With this movie, I tried to actively not watch space movies. And I think it was, again, maybe because I was less interested in homage with this movie and more about trying to kind of make a space movie as though almost trying to deny that the earlier space movies had existed, which can be hard because a lot of them are really damn good. But trying to sort of almost blindly go down my own path, and I wanted that path to be more dictated by documentaries. So definitely I was watching a ton of archival space footage, like movies like For All Mankind, if you've ever seen. Amazing documentary entirely comprised of archival footage from the era, from the Apollo missions. That I watched and screened for the cast and crew. I watched that several times leading up to shooting. But then also I'd say just a lot of documentaries of the period that had nothing to do with space. I'd watch stuff like Gimme Shelter by the Maisels or Salesman by the Maisels or Frederick Weissman documentaries or D.A. Pennebaker documentaries, just kind of verite, direct cinema documentaries from that period, that just in many ways were as far from the space program as you could get, but gave me at least a sense of how we could shoot this and how we could capture the flavor of the time. That was our screening
amazing.
series.
Incredible, yeah.
Which one?
Gimme Shelter's way up there for
so
me.
great.
The scene of Jagger rewatching the clip with that like blank look on his face.
And to remember that's the same year, same season as the moon landing. I mean, that's summer 60. Is it summer 69 Altamont? I mean, I know it's 69.
Oh, that was 69,
It's just incredible, when you think of that movie as a snapshot of its time.
What do Gosling's next 10 years look like? You're pretty close to him now. What do you see him doing? I really have no idea. Because it seems like he just loves to do something we don't expect him to do with the next project.
That's all I can promise in a way, is that because I haven't gotten a chance to really talk to him in any more depth than that about it. But I can assure you, whatever he does next will not be what you or I am expecting him to do next. I think it's part of what I love about him as an actor and as a filmmaker, and I think he did do a lot of movies back to back before First Man, and then sort of immersed himself in First Man and wanted to kind of see that through to the finish. He wasn't just sort of a presence on set in First Man. He was very, obviously during prep, there was a ton of research and involvement he was doing, but then even, I'd have him come by the cutting room when we were editing, and just sort of trying to, I just love pinging ideas back and forth off him. He's just a great collaborator from beginning to end in that sense. And so I think he was just, totally in that world until we finished the movie, which again was relatively recently. So I think he himself is probably trying to figure out right now what is next.
What's your best Ryan Gosling story?
My best Ryan Gosling story. Well, he claims that. So we first met to talk about this movie before La La Land. I wanted to meet him and pitch him basically Neil Armstrong, see if he'd be interested in playing Neil Armstrong. And so this would have been back in 2015, maybe. And so we met up at this restaurant, and I got there and didn't see him at first. And then he, I guess, came from behind and tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around. Now, he claims that I turned around in such a way that it made it seem on my face like I wanted to kill him. Like I was turning around to go, who the just tapped me on the shoulder. Yeah. Now, I argue with this claim a little bit because I think I'm a very, mild-mannered, sweet-tempered person. But he, I guess, saw like the rage of a bull seeing red in my face. and then I saw it was him. And again, according to Ryan, that dissolved and everything. But I think when people ask him like, so yeah, and what made you, want to, kind of take a chance on Damien and everything, and sort of kind of band up together, whether it was La La Land or First Man, at least I've heard him sometimes refer to that moment of, oh, well, we're either gonna, as he describes it, we're either gonna fight right now physically, or we're gonna make some movies together. It's gonna be one or the other. I think he
That's
likes
a great
the fighting
story.
spirit.
He saw some edginess in you that he was attracted to. He was like, "This is a guy I want to go to war with."
Yeah, and I never wanted to break it to him that it was a completely faux impression, that this was a fleeting and false veneer. But hey, I'll take it.
So you don't know what's next.
I don't, but I'm sort of, just getting out of the First Man world.
Looking at that blank final draft doc.
I'm trying to avoid that.
This is why he's been, I haven't written a lot this year, and he's always like, when are you going to write something? And it's like, I don't want to stare at that blank doc anymore.
So you got to take the Damien method of bringing a journal to a coffee
maybe
shop.
like a playlist, journal. Maybe I got to bring
the
pen and paper back.
Or do it as an email.
The blank doc is just after so many years of it.
Yeah.
I get psyched out by it.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I thought that writing would get easier, as I did it more and more, it got harder.
You can fill it up. It's just the process of going through having to fill it up.
Oh yeah,
becomes less fun like each time.
Yeah. And you sense it when you're filling it with crap. It's like
that's terrible.
The delete button.
Yeah,
is still. Or the worst though is actually sensing that you're filling it with genius and then reading it back the next day and realizing it's crap.
It's like, what was this?
That's even worse.
Those are very evocative feelings.
Yeah, I feel like this is. I see you,
and you're actually good.
Scrunching your.
That hurts.
Yeah, we all feel that pain.
First Man, good luck with it. I thought it was excellent. I can't wait to see it in the theater instead of my iPad.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks so much to Damien Chazelle. Thanks to Van Lathan. Thanks to the one and only Joe House. Thanks to ZipRecruiter. Don't forget to go to ZipRecruiter.com/BS. Thanks to FanDuel. You get the excitement of researching and building your team each week, regardless of the outcome at FanDuel. Tons of ways to play, like the Gridiron Pick'em contest. Just pick winners, no spreads. 10K splits amongst the top pickers. I've tried other DF sites, S sites, and if you're not a fantasy expert, FanDuel is clearly the place to play. New users get a $5 bonus when they make the first deposit. Come play with me at FanDuel.com/BS. Don't forget to check out all of our great Preview Palooza contest content. I am fried. We've been doing content now for like 14 hours. I could barely speak, but we have some good stuff up there. Check it out on all the Ringer platforms. Thanks to all the Ringer team. Awesome day today. I'm proud of everybody. And we'll be back later this week on the BS Podcast. Until then.